This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hope you had an awesome long weekend. Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you. Packed show today because there is a lot to break down going over the course of the last 3 days since we've been on the air with our big Friday show and a fun marble race to finish off last week. Obviously, we will get to the latest rumors and whatnot regarding Barry Trotz, the breakdown of the CFL CBA agreement. Jeff Hamilton is going to join us for an extended segment. He'll be on a little later on. And we'll also talk hiring coaches, what's going on behind the scenes, and Stanley Cup playoffs with TSN's Dave Poulin. And maybe, just maybe, a trip out to Alberta to tee up tonight's Battle of Alberta a little bit later on in the program. Needless to say, both what was happening on the ice and off the ice, plenty of hockey topics. We'll also maybe get to the PGA Championship on the weekend, which was ended up being a thriller. Wasn't expecting that earlier in the day. But certainly gave us some excitement on late Sunday afternoon. Listen, let's get Remis in here and get things going. A big shout out to the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Aikens Lake, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Vita Health Fresh Market, Culligan Water, Manitoba Battery, Royal Sports, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Princess Auto, Boston Pizza, Little Brown Jug, Not Auto Corp, Breezy Bend. Oh, great to have the golf courses open. Some nice weather for golf today if you're able to get out. Assiniboia Downs, Canadian Club Whiskey, and of course our betting partners over at Coolbet Canada. Speaking of Coolbet, Dustin Nielsen and I just dropped the latest edition of the Lock Shop. So maybe after you're watching Winnipeg Sports Talk, you can check out our picks and some of the banter we had earlier. Search Lock Shop wherever you get your podcasts, and it's there. Obviously, it's up on our social media feeds as well. Let's get to it. Michael Remis, how was your weekend? You had a busy one. Wedding festivities are back in full effect. How was your F Apparel suit?
Oh, yeah.
Did you get lots of comments on it?
Oh man, everyone said that I was in the groomsmen party. Everyone said I was the hottest groomsman in my F Apparel suit. Only, nah.
Definitely the clothes make the man, I guess.
Yeah, definitely the clothes make the man. So yeah, I felt great. Was able to move freely on the dance floor as well. So shout out to F Apparel for the suit, and shout out to Seth and Lauren. Fantastic weekend. Weddings are back, and this is how you know it was a Winnipeg wedding, Huss. They had a Slurpee machine behind the bar at Sunday's celebration. Elite move. I spoke about weddings, that maybe had McDonald's as a midnight snack or something like that, but Slurpee machine at a wedding was a first for me, and it was elite as a power.
What was there a McDonald's spread at midnight or whatever? That's sort of been something that's been popping up as of late at some of these events.
They did have mini donuts, which I hadn't had, which was pretty good too. Yeah, man, I know that was pretty good. I have some upstairs left over still.
Well, there was a toddler that somehow got on his mom skip the dishes app and ordered 31 cheeseburgers over the course of the weekend. I'm not sure if you saw that. That kid, man. So much respect for that kid. We've all done that once or twice, maybe not 31, and maybe it was on purpose and not accidentally, but it was quite. Anyway, shout out to F Apparel. If you do need to look good for a wedding or other event, give Andrew and the gang a call down at 190 Smith Street, and you can also check them online at fapparel.com. All right, Reem, let's get right to this because I know your inbox was blowing up over the course of the weekend, as was mine. Sort of kept this quiet on social media for obvious reasons because it is such a hot button topic here in Winnipeg. But Trotz Watch continued throughout the weekend. And there was a report from a local Jets account and podcast that Barry Trotz had been hired and was going to be announced today as the head coach of the Winnipeg Jets. Now, and we'll get to this with Jeff. Jeff Hamilton, I think, did a very good job both writing about it in today's Winnipeg Free Press, as well as a tweet thread yesterday that the Jets are certainly in the mix. They will be speaking with Barry Trotz, but as Elliot Friedman also said, it is way, way premature to be saying that Barry Trotz is the next head coach of the Winnipeg Jets. Now, I would love for the guys, the gang that rolled that out to be right. At this point, I mean, there's not really much else that would lead us to believe that that is the case. And I'll tell you what, if there's a press conference today that is scheduled, we don't know about it yet, and there hasn't really been any rumbling. So I think this now listen, and Remo, we were talking about this off air. This is one of three things to me. This could be an account trying to, basically drop something like this that is essentially fake news to get people fired up, to have fun with people on the internet, essentially trolling. That would be absolutely Bush League. I mean, if it's people that, basically their audience are Jets fans doing that, if there was malice intended. I'm not saying that that is the case, but obviously that could be the case. That would be Bush League if that was the case. Number two, these guys, these people could be potentially getting played by somebody, having a little fun with them, trying to get that out. And if that's the case, you have to be careful when you're putting things out in the public domain. Listen, it does. I don't want to say this affects so many people, but in some ways it has. I mean, I think pretty much everyone in the chat was probably talking about this weekend, asking people what's up. And certainly it filled the inboxes of a lot of people that cover this team on a regular basis, finding out what the heck is going on. So listen, it could be caught in it, getting some bad information and maybe making a bad choice with making it public. And then there's the third option. They could be right. Now, it doesn't look like that announcement's happening anytime today, as I mentioned, but tell you what, I mean, if there's something behind the scenes that has led them to believe that this absolutely is happening and it's going to be a day or two later, listen, they will get big time credit if this does come true. But it's hard to spend too much time talking about it, Remo, because in a lot of ways, this is the news that everybody wants to hear. So, of course, people want to believe it, but that's what makes that sort of information that is far from confirmed a little bit dangerous for people. You get their hopes up. So I don't really know what to tell you other than I hope they're right. Doesn't seem like any of the guys on the inside are indicating that they are at this point. And I have a feeling that Trotz watch is going to continue a while longer. But as I said, if it does come to fruition that he is in fact the coach, and maybe they take an extra day or two to get it done and announce it, that will be a great thing. Because if it's one or two, that is a sad, sad state of affairs when it comes to, people using the internet to push people's buttons. And certainly had a lot of people excited, but also on edge, and the potential of making them very, very disappointed. And certainly anyone that is involved in that Jets space on the net, if you did something like this on purpose just to troll people, I think it's somewhat suicidal for an account that wants to, get Jet fans in. So fingers crossed that there will be some good news on this, and these guys were way ahead of it. But as of right now, there's not really anything that I can come on here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily and tell you, oh, it looks like it's happening, but it's just late. We really don't know. And we will sort of lean on Jeff Hamilton, who, of course, was speaking about that today. He'll join us later on, as well as insiders like Elliot Friedman and Darren Drager, who really are the go-to guys when confirming important off-ice NHL news.
Yeah, I got a couple people messaging me or coming up to me at the wedding that I was at on Sunday saying, did you see this? And, people texting me yesterday. And I basically said, look, unless it's from, Elliot Friedman or Drager, or who's Sarah Valley, LeBrun, Jeff Hamilton's putting out information in Murat, then I'm not buying in. I'm trying to figure out, why an account would put out that information. And I agree with you. It could be one of those three things. If you're trying to have a, legitimate, credible podcast, I don't know why you would be putting out, trolling everyone like that. So, I don't know, but here we are on Tuesday, and there's no announcement. We did have some, some information though. Murat putting it out. Shout out to him. I'll just pull up his tweet from the weekend. He said, "My own understanding on Trotz, he has more interviews on the way. He won't rush his decision, and Winnipeg is a viable option. I believe this is similar to what Elliot Friedman has reported, and that was yesterday morning's 32 Thoughts podcast." And then Murat also adds, he expects Trotz to interview with Dallas in addition to Philly, Vegas, or Detroit. And now that Florida's out, you have to wonder if they're a possible destination as well. So that's from Murat. So I think that's all we know. And then Jeff, we can go through Jeff's lengthy Twitter thread, which everyone was paying attention to yesterday as well.
Yeah, listen, Hammer broke it down. I think it was about a 9-parter. I don't know if you want to pull that thing up,
Sure.
but I mean, it basically says many of the same things that we've been hearing. I mean, the Jets are certainly in the mix. They're certainly in consideration. There'll probably be more discussions between the two sides, but I mean, it goes without saying that, Barry Trotz, I think, is going to hear out some of these other teams as far as to what. The one interesting thing that came out from Hammer's tweet thread, Reem, is that of the potential suitors out there, none of them at Winnipeg view Trotz as the long-term solution, meaning future management opportunities. And that could be in addition to coming home, all the romantic stuff that we'd love to be impactful. We don't know whether that will be for Barry Trotz. It has been reported that he has interest in going to a spot where there is somewhat of a plan for him at a certain point to finish being the head coach and move into a management role. Listen, I think the Jets check a lot of the boxes for Barry Trotz right now. Certainly what we don't know is money and some of those other things, but hopefully that won't be an issue and they won't just get crazily outbid, and that won't be the difference maker. But as far as that additional option of moving into the front office, I think it's a no-brainer from a Winnipeg perspective. You could have that guy on that sort of a plan, which I believe at one point was the plan for Paul Maurice. But all of that will come into Barry Trotz's decision. And from everything that we're hearing, that decision simply isn't made as of yet.
That's what it sounds like, according to Jeff. I agree with you that, having into future management, we've talked over the last couple of weeks how the Jets don't have a president of hockey operations, and that seems to be a position that a lot of other teams are adding in. And would they move Cheveldayoff, who just signed that 3-year extension, to, maybe after this deal, to president type, overseer position, and then elevate Trotz? Jeff also did mention a number of names. Some of them he mentioned here a week ago. Other potential candidates: Scott Arniel, Claude Julien, Derek Lalonde, Kirk Muller, Pascal Vincent, Spencer Carberry. And he also floated out Rick Bowness, who left Dallas, and Rick Bowness as an assistant, and then also Todd Woodcroft as well. So those are some names that is being floated around. And it seems like the Jets trying to get an answer from Trotz sooner than later. That's what Jeff was reporting, and he will elaborate later when he joins at 1:50. But I mean, that's where we are. There's seemingly nothing imminent. Still a couple more teams to have interviews with, and then we'll see. But that was the number one story here. I mean, I know there's a lot of playoff hockey games going on, and a lot of teams, advancing in series and playing series. But here, I believe Trotz Watch, that is the number one thing on the menu.
And listen, it's going to continue. It will continue all week long until there is some sort of, definitive result of the quest of both the Jets and everybody else in the National Hockey League is throwing their hat in the ring to get Barry Trotz to be their new bench boss. So while we would love to have this thing over and have some clarity, hopefully on a good thing, you make a good point, though. I think the Winnipeg Jets do want to have some clarity at some point soon about this. And if it's not going to be Barry Trotz, which will be very disappointing to many, then you go into that next group of candidates. But I mean, to me, and listen, there's some names in there, Claude Julien, Kirk Muller, the guys that I think would be attractive to this market. But let's face it, folks, it's Barry Trotz here and then that other group. And they seem to be very focused in on Trotz right now. I know we'd all love to know that that's happening today and have those reports on the weekend be right. It just doesn't look like they are right now. But as I said, if they are, there will be credit doled out and there will be much celebration in and around Winnipeg, Manitoba, that Barry Trotz is coming back home. There was some other Jets news, though, on the weekend, Remo, and could we be seeing the end of Christian Vesalainen's time here in Winnipeg. It's reported that he is signing with, I believe, Malmo of the Swedish league. And can't say I'm really surprised by this. Vesalainen had his best shot in the National Hockey League this year, playing significant minutes, with Adam Lowry, getting, more of an opportunity than almost any young players had, at least in the forward group, in a long time. And it just didn't work out. I think he lost his confidence at times. I mean, there could be an argument that maybe he was playing in a spot that wasn't, conducive to him. But the bottom line is, he wasn't bouncing anybody out of that top six. So when you have those limited results, he did go back to the Manitoba Moose, but again, didn't really stand out at the AHL level either coming back. I think it was obvious that maybe Vesalainen's time with the organization's done. Now they can, as long as they give a qualifying offer, they will retain his rights. And I would imagine that's probably something that they will do. But if you were expecting a big bounce back season, Vesalainen to be in the mix for the Winnipeg Jets this year, I have a feeling that has changed right now. And, listen, you can't win them all. He was a later round, first round draft pick. He did come, and obviously with having Patrick Laine here, there was a lot of excitement that maybe you could have another Finnish sniper on the other side. It just didn't really work out, but not for lack of opportunity this year. There's a number of players that can claim that. Vesalainen isn't one of them, and sounds like he's going to go back to Europe for at least next season.
Yeah, I agree. He was given quite a long leash here this year. We had hyped him up in the preseason saying this is his opportunity to take the bull by the horns and go with it. But the 53 games, only 3 points. I think at times he showed flashes, but there wasn't enough there. And maybe he overstayed his welcome in the NHL, got sent down to the Moose, and I didn't really see him fitting in, at least right away next year. So good for him. He's still pretty young. He's turning 23 on June 1st. So, maybe you go for a year, and if he does have aspirations for the NHL, you can figure things out, get some confidence back, and, come back over the ocean to Winnipeg. Yeah, as you said, the Jets can make him a qualifying offer to retain his rights, which I would think they would do. But as for now, you think you can count him out of the team's immediate plans. And again, sometimes they don't work out. As you said, first round pick, 24th overall in 2017. I remember watching the highlights. Thinking it was a right-handed Laine. Even has Laine in his last name, but you just didn't see enough of those flashes from him. We were salivating over Laine, on the left side of the power play, and Vesalainen on the right side, but neither going to be with the Jets next season.
Yeah, so that moved on from that plan here on WST. Of course, Patrick Laine, a Columbus Blue Jacket, and now Christian Vesalainen seemingly headed back to Sweden, signing with Malmo for next year. All right, so that's the latest on the Winnipeg Jets beat. Remo, the other huge story that we'll talk to Jeff a little bit more later on was the news that the Canadian Football League and the CFLPA, they thought they had the deal. Well, apparently not. The CFLPA did not ratify the deal. And listen, I was sort of in shock yesterday that this happened, although credit to Dave Naylor, who joined us on Friday, said he wasn't entirely sure. He did not have the confidence that this was going to be ratified. I was stunned. But that's where we are right now. Now, teams are practicing. Bombers are back out there today. I know John Hodge from 3 Down Nation reported that the CFL was tabling another offer to the players. And it really does seem like this is a sticking point on the Canadian ratio that might be sort of pushed forth by the Canadian contingent. And it was interesting. We heard Nick Dembski earlier didn't sound too pleased with the deal. Of course, we had Jake Thomas on before the deal was done, and he was optimistic. But you do wonder about the split or the divide between the American players and the Canadian players, what's behind that, and bottom line, how they get this figured out, so we're not losing any preseason games and business can continue as planned, which seems to be happening right now in the Canadian Football League. But if it doesn't get worked out, you've got the potential of a strike, you've got potential of the players being locked out by the CFL. It could get very, very messy, and it does seem like we're almost on the precipice of that, although hopefully things can be averted.
Yeah, I'm not, I got a message from a listener who said, is there going to be a CFL season? I'm not going to go that far, but this is a pretty important couple of days. they don't want to have to miss games and lose out on revenue. The Bombers are supposed to have a preseason game Friday. I would like to think that cooler heads can prevail and they can find a way to sit down and figure this out. There's way too much to lose here. So you don't want to have another canceled season. And I don't know too much of the minutia of the details. I know Jeff will speak to that later. It was surprising to see. It seems to be a bit of a, the disconnect between the U.S. players and the Canadian players. I think you have some issues there. But I don't know. I just feel like you got to figure out a way to sit down and hammer this out. You can't have a canceled season. So,
well, and in a way, I mean, this is a direct shot at the guys that did the deal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this was agreed to by the representatives and the player reps from the CFL with the league and then brought back to the players, and they voted it down. And I did see, and forgive me for forgetting who quoted this, but it was somebody, I believe it was one of the players involved, that 30% of the league did not vote. So they got to figure this out and figure it out fast. I still am optimistic that we'll be in a situation where cooler heads can prevail and this can get figured out. But we will check in with Jeff Hamilton a little bit later on that topic, as well as Trotz Watch and what he's hearing from the Winnipeg Jets regarding their pursuit of Barry Trotz to be their next head coach. We'll also talk Stanley Cup playoffs with Poulin coming up in just a few minutes. But real quickly, I do want to mention, we'll get to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Went to the Ice game on the weekend, and this series has been wild. I mean, the Ice are now down 2-1 after losing in overtime last night. But this series has had a little bit of everything. The Ice on Friday night, down 4-1, coming back to force OT. Daniel Hauser replaced by Gage Alexander. And then, listen, the worst thing that can happen to a goalie, you come in, play great, keep your team in the game, you get it to overtime, and then a self-inflicted mistake ends up in the back of the net. And that was the difference in the Oil Kings getting game number 1. But credit to the Ice, came back. I was there on Saturday night. Just an awesome atmosphere, packed house, Saturday night, junior hockey, 2 amazing teams. And it was Mikey Milne, the hero, that propelled the Ice to their first win of the series. Now, they're back in Edmonton for games 3, 4, and 5. And last night, it was Zach Benson scoring with about 4 minutes left to put the Ice up 3-2. Unfortunately for the Ice, though, the Oil Kings were able to tie it up late with the goalie pulled and then win it in overtime, beating Gage Alexander, who seemingly has taken over the number 1 spot in the crease for James Patrick. So 2-1 is the series right now. Wednesday night, tomorrow, game number 4. Friday night, game number 5. And then Sunday, 5 p.m., if necessary, and hopefully it will be necessary because the Ice need to win a game to get this series back to Winnipeg, will be game number 6. And then, of course, game 7, if it gets to that point. If you have the opportunity, if this series does go to 6 games, come on out to the Ice Cave. 2 amazing teams, really the top 2 teams in Canada for the majority of the season. So I will be there. Hopefully there will be a game, and we'll see you out there for the Ice and the Edmonton Oil Kings. All right, we're going to bring in Dave Poulin right now. Just before we do that, big thanks to our friends at Aikens Lake. The season is off and running. A little bit of extra work to do to build a new dock with all the water out there in the White Shell, but they're ready to go. Limited availability for the rest of this year. It's their busiest year ever, but if you're looking for an unbelievable 5-star fishing experience less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, Aikens Lake is the spot. Find out more at aikenslake.com. or on Twitter, at Aikens Lake. Our friends at Wallace & Wallace are Winnipeg's fencing and overhead door specialists, serving residential and commercial customers since 1946. Folks, if you need the security and protection of a new fence, or if winter did a number on your old one, they've got you covered. Vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood. Wallace & Wallace has the right fence for you. And if it's time to replace your garage door, they got Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors. The experts from Wallace & Wallace will come out and give you a free estimate. So give them a call at 452-2700, or you can pop down to their showroom at Lawson Road off Kenniston, or visit them online at wallacefences.com. And of course, our friends at Vita Health Fresh Market continue to be the spot for great prices on Winnipeg's best selection of natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries. They've got delicious lunch options as well at the grab-and-go deli with Vitamarket salads, soups, sandwiches, and more. Not to mention great healthy options for the barbecue, including lean bison steaks or chicken. And hey, if you can't make it into the store, visit their brand new fully shoppable website at myvita.ca to buy online or schedule a delivery with Instacart. And you can pop by and see them at one of 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge. All right, lots of hockey to get to with our good friend Dave Poulin from the TSN Hockey Panel. Poulin, what's going on? How was your long weekend?
Well, a little bit of work on my long weekend, Andrew. Not quite relaxing time yet. In fact, I had a buddy call and ask me if I made it to a cottage. And I said, well, unfortunately, that would have included 2 hockey games, Sports Center, a couple of Gino Retta shows. And so, no, there was no cottage this weekend at all. But I still am intrigued with the Aikens Lake opening, and I think they filled the position, and I'm a little disappointed because it looks absolutely beautiful. And I would love to have joined you out there on the long weekend.
We'd have to get you out there at some point later in the summer when you're not quite as busy with the Stanley Cup playoffs. Hey, Dave, before we get to the Stanley Cup playoffs, listen, everyone here is on pins and needles as we follow Trotz Watch, as it's known here in Winnipeg, about the future of Barry Trotz. I wanted to ask you about coaching searches overall. But first up, are you hearing anything about Barry? It does sound like there's plenty of teams that are interested in the Dauphin natives' services for next season as their head coach.
As there should be, Andrew. He's an excellent coach. And the availability of a couple of people right now, I think the uniqueness of having, right now we have 6 openings. And as well, there's 2 interim jobs that haven't been technically filled yet. One, just as of last night with Andrew Brunette, that's still the interim basis. And of course, nothing is confirmed yet with Martin St. Louis. Now, we all assume he's going back to Montreal, but the interim tag is still hanging on that one. But not only 6, hang on a second, Cheryl Pounder's looking for me, and she's not going to get me right now. So she's on our panel tonight. And
she's great.
She's tremendous. She's doing a terrific job. She had the juniors on the weekend and the women on the weekend, and she's just done a great job. But I think it's the uniqueness of the jobs opened right now and of the quality of candidates available. And you have 6 openings besides the 2 interim spots I chatted about. You have 6 openings right now, and openings that not too long you would have said, "Oh, wait a second." Vegas, Chicago, Winnipeg, Philadelphia, who am I missing here? Dallas.
Yeah, Detroit.
Detroit are all going to be open right now. And so you don't know, Lou Lamoriello acts right away and he fills it with Lane Lambert, who I think is an excellent choice and was always on my short list in my top left drawer. And I always kept a list. When I was a scout, I kept a list. And when I was in the management business, I kept a list, because if I saw someone that intrigued me in the American League, as both Lane Lambert and Dean Evison did, I'd put them on my list. And when I had a job to fill in the American League, when I was, running the Toronto Marlies, I went to that list and I reached out to a number of people that had just simply intrigued me by watching them. And I always watch a bench to see what's going on. I always sit across them and always watch it. But right now, you've got names like Barry Trotz and Peter DeBoer and Mike Babcock's still out there somewhere, Andrew. And you've got all these guys, but you've got excellent guys who've been head coaches. And a name I heard recently, tied to Winnipeg is Scotty Arneal, who I played with in Boston and think very highly of. And so maybe they get an opportunity at some point. The fit isn't exactly right. They move back into an associate or an assistant coach's role. And they excel in that again, and maybe are more ready the second time around. And when I think of more ready the second time around, I think of Bruce Cassidy, who had an opportunity in Washington at a very young age, went back to the American League, ground through it again, and his second time around in Boston has been terrific. And so with so many candidates available, and now you're wondering why they're waiting. Are they waiting for someone else they might think might be available after the second round? If something happens through these 2 rounds, are conversations going to be had with maybe an associate or an assistant who's still involved in playing right now on one of the teams, and they might have to wait till they're done? So a lot of moving parts on both sides, and also the veteran nature of the GMs who are conducting these searches, Jimmy Neal and Kevin Cheveldayoff and Stevie Yzerman. And, you've got some guys conducting, but you've also got some young guys like Kyle Davidson in Chicago conducting the searches. So, boy, there's a lot of factors that go into this, Andrew. It's not as simple as, oh, there's a job opening, there's a candidate, let's fill it.
Well, and let's, because one of the things that, our colleague Pierre LeBrun reported was that, we know people are going to have fat checks for Barry Trotz. He's going to be getting paid, and he'll be paid well wherever he goes. That the market will dictate that. But one of the things Pierre has reported, and we're going to talk to Jeff Hamilton about this a little later on, is that Barry Trotz has indicated to teams that he would like to have a path into management. And it does seem, when you compare the other spots, that Winnipeg maybe has a unique opportunity in that respect that maybe doesn't exist in some of the other places. But let me put this to you, Poulin, because you've been on, in the hockey operations front office side of things and have gone through hiring coaches. What normally happens? Like, what's normally involved in the coaching interview process? And how might it be different for a guy like Barry Trotz with half the league interested in getting his services?
And that is a great question. I've been on the other side of it. I've been on both sides of it. I've been on a side interviewing for jobs. I've also been on the side in a very unique way, Andrew, of interviewing for jobs when I really didn't want another job. And when I was the head coach at Notre Dame, I had some rather remarkable opportunities to leave the college game and go into the pro ranks. And I went through the process at the encouragement of my agent, and it was as much to know fully that I wanted to stay where I was. I thought I did, but he said, but you got to be sure. If you're that sure you're going to stay at Notre Dame, and I did stay for 10 years, then be sure of it. And a lot of these opportunities came early in my tenure there in the second and third and fourth years, when I was a rising coach and things were going well, and it was whether I wanted to go to the pro game. But I think from a standpoint of how the interview process goes, it depends on how well you know the person involved. A couple I was involved with when I was asked to interview for a job were people I knew really well. Well, that changes the texture of an interview. If you know somebody really well, the first hour isn't going to be background. And they know your kids, they know your situation, they know everything about you. It's not going to be, those things are going to be eliminated. But, in some instances, you don't know the person personally, and you don't know exactly what that may entail in terms of, what the depth of the job is, what it's going to involve. But I think the part about Barry wanting to get into management is very intriguing. There was a day when there was the title called coach and general manager. It's hard to believe now that a guy did both those jobs, like a Pat Quinn, because of how much is involved and the depth of what's involved in each job. But I think a communication, it could be as simple as the communication with the general manager to ensure that you have an input into who is brought in, because you're going to be the one that coaches them. And I think that issue in itself is really key in terms of knowing that communication level is going to be there the entire time. So I think that factor really does work towards, where Barry may be in this process.
If you do have Barry on speed dial, send him a text. Let him know it's time to come home, Dave. It would make a lot of people very, very happy here in Manitoba.
I was the one that was selling Dauphin as a suburb.
That's right. Hey, you can have the whole damn province if he comes back. It'll be
game, Barry.
Trotz territory here, the province of Manitoba. If we can get it done.
Yeah, Andrew, to your point, a lot of those factors do go in. It's a family decision in a lot of ways. Like, part of me and why I stayed at Notre Dame as long as I did was I wanted my kids to get through high school, and I wanted them to get right through in one city. I didn't want them to have to move. So how do those factors weigh in depending on where a coach is in his own family and life? And because so much burden is put on the family and having to move and all those different things, hey, it's a factor in that for sure.
No doubt about it. Dave Poulin's with us from TSN Hockey. Let's get to the Stanley Cup playoffs, and Tommy Gazzola is going to join us from Edmonton a little later on. Handsome Tommy on to talk Battle of Alberta. I was scared for the Oilers and just for hockey fans after game number 1 and what a disaster that was defensively for them. I was worried that we might not get, to game 6. What an absolute turnaround. And listen, it's all in the back of number 97. I mean, we're spoiled. We get used to the greatness of this player, Dave, but listen, what he's done so far in these Stanley Cup playoffs, and in particular these last 2 games, has left absolutely no debate as to who the best player in the world putting on skates is. I mean, how many times have you and the gang's jaw dropped when you watch what 97's had for the Flames these last couple of games?
It's been brilliant. It's been really brilliant. Even breaking down the goals today, I went deep into the 4 goals from the last game and all rush goals and how he impacted each goal. And the one goal he doesn't have a point on was a turnover and a line change. But when Oliver Kylington is getting back in the play, he literally turns and shoulder checks to see where McDavid is on the ice. And that leads to the goal. So in the one he doesn't get the point in, he may have had the biggest impact on because Kylington let Kane go worried about where McDavid was on the ice. And not only is he playing brilliantly, he's deep in their buckets right now, Andrew.
Oh.
He is deep in the mines. Now, you're talking to a guy who went head-to-head with number 99 in both 85 and 87 in the Cup Finals, and then had the pleasure of seeing 66 in 92 and 93 in the or 91 and 92 in the conference finals. When I was in Boston, we lost to Pittsburgh both times in the Final Four. So I have seen the best when they are the best. And the one ingredient, so if I'm going to say he's the best right now, the one ingredient that arguably separates him from those two is the speed at which he's doing things at.
Unprecedented.
And I think everybody's in agreement that the game is faster today than it was. It's different, but it's faster. And he's the fastest of the faster, if I'm using all my English correctly.
We're following you.
And just, it's amazing to watch, but they have to eliminate that. One guy's not going to shut him down, period. End of conversation. And I used to laugh when people say, "Oh, you did a really good job on Mario tonight." And I'd say, "Yeah," and there were 4 other guys out in the ice when I was out there, and another whole bunch on the bench that were all doing every bit as much. We also had the luxury of having Ronnie Sutter and myself, so it could be a different look, right shot, left shot, different styles of games. Ronnie was a little more in your face than I was. I played off a little bit, challenged them on angles. So they've got to really pay attention to him, but not be consumed with him. And what's happening now is the lanes are opening up around him because people are so consumed with him. And if that's the case, that's where Evander Kane benefits, who can keep up on the play and can finish. And where Draisaitl, who's always the first option to get the puck, can continue. But I think this is still a series, Andrew. And you guys are probably marveling in Winnipeg saying, is this the team that we swept last year in the playoffs, really? Like, seriously? And thankfully that didn't happen with 97 last year in the playoffs. But he's different right now. He's more physical. He's more engaged. And I think that's his burning desire to win because he's done everything else in the game. But
it's funny you bring up Wayne and Mario. I've also, we have all these conversations, whether it be on the shows or over a bar top with friends talking the game. And listen, I think Wayne Gretzky is the greatest career in NHL history. I mean, the body of work from start to finish, the records, Wayne #1 for career. I've always maintained, though, that Mario Lemieux, in my opinion, played the game at his best. He played the game at the highest level that we've ever seen on an individual basis. What we're seeing from Connor McDavid right now is in like the brilliance that he's putting out game in and game out on an individual level and what he's able to do. He might be the new #1 on this list as the game and the players overall have improved. Like, let me ask you this. If you took today's McDavid and plunked him on one of those rosters in the late 80s with the style of the game that he played at his speed, how many points would he have put up in a season, Dave?
But I think that's relative because our question would have been, how do we slow them down? And we had maybe different methods than they have right now.
Yes, I was just about to say.
Right? I mean,
think of what Mario went through each and every game. I mean, the hacking and whacking, the bumper shining.
6'6" and 230 pounds or whatever his numbers were. And that's a big dude. And, and so I have so much respect for the best of each generation. The guys that played against both Bobby Orr and Gretz, and, there's a certain age that would have played against both when they were both, maybe not Gretz totally in his prime, because what was his prime? It lasted a lot longer than most, but more in his healthy prime. And then Gretz. And they'll say that Orr was different. And why was he different? Because he changed the speed of the game from the defense position. And so that's what I'm saying about Connor right now is he's changing the speed of the game for elite playing. And it's just faster. It's faster all around. And the coordination of the hands, the feet, and the head, boy, oh boy. I mean, I'd be tripping going up the stairs. And, he's doing it, amidst being checked and challenged every turn of the way.
I can't wait for this game tonight. I mean, I think we'll see a really desperate, urgent Calgary Flames team. And, for someone that just hopes we get a nice, long, fun series, a win and 2-2 going back to Calgary to guarantee a game 6, and I think give us a very good chance of 7 is exactly what hockey fans need. What a turnaround in the St. Louis, Colorado series. I thought St. Louis played, a brilliant game in game 2 to get home ice and bring it back to home ice. Listen, the incident on Saturday was very unfortunate for Jordan Binnington. I mean, he's one of the biggest head cases in the league, and we saw him tossing the water bottle at Kadri afterwards. And it is sort of amazing that because of some lowlifes on Twitter and social media with some of the things that have been put at Kadri and his family, that Kadri all of a sudden is now the sympathetic figure in all of this, Dave. But I will say this. As far as on the ice, the way that he performed last night with an entire team out to get him, an entire building screaming nothing but very, very unpleasant things at him. The hat trick and the way that he played and shut out the noise, shut out what was happening was, let's just say this, a huge, huge step forward for Kadri, whose playoff history has usually been marred by making bad decisions that cost his team. He put his team on his back last night with that hat trick and the big win. What did you make of what happened on Saturday and the way the Avalanche and particularly Nazem Kadri fought through it?
Well, let's start backwards with the reaction of some of the fans in social. Absolutely unacceptable.
Idiots.
In every single way possible. Like totally, totally unacceptable. There's no place for it. No place for it in society. There's no place for it in sport. I mean, for the majority, the high majority, and we will put all of us in the high majority, it's unfathomable and unfortunate that the year attached to it is 2022.
These people are not okay. I mean, let's just face it. I mean, if you're reaching out and, I mean, period, never mind getting into the disgusting racist stuff that's in there. I mean, if you're reaching out to family members of a professional athlete, you need a long look in the mirror. I mean, as Remis said before, these people are not okay. But it is important to call it out. It's important to call it out. It's important to show it. And it's important to take that stand against it because it has no place anywhere, but especially in a game that is supposed to bring people together.
It's a minuscule minority for sure. And we have to stress that it is, a handful of unfortunately very too loud people, and it's got no place. So let's start there. The play of Nazem, I know Nazem well, Andrew. I and I dealt with him in the very early stages of a very young, and I don't know where I would go with this. Entertaining. Like I sat in on his first suspension call. I have the privilege of doing that. And prepping with him, waiting for the first suspension call, which was on Backstrom, the goaltender in Minnesota, who he'd accidentally run over. And so I've seen the contrite Nazem Kadri. I've seen a lot of different Nazem Kadris. also seen the growth of the player. I mean, he's a top player now in the league and able to put a lot of distractions out of the way in that case. And St. Louis, I thought, was more in tune with themselves than what was displayed last night. And
they were completely unhinged, Dave.
They lost it, and they did. And when the game was still very winnable, and then all of a sudden it was 4-3 and very winnable. And I don't think this series is over, even despite the outcome of last night. I don't. I think there's still more hockey to play. And I still think St. Louis is built the way now, as crazy as it sounds, I'm not sure they have the goaltending now. And they have the goaltending because of the play that we're talking about. And did Nazem Kadri know what he was doing when that happened? I believe he did. I mean, I believe he knew he was crashing into Binnington. And I do. I mean, I just, you talk about control, and he said that the defenseman affected him. Well, the defenseman was a little bit behind him on the play. He wasn't ahead of him, or ahead of him, rather. He wasn't behind him and able to push him in. And so really unfortunate that Binnington got hurt because he was at the top of his game. And he was a big part, I think, of the makeup of St. Louis's swagger in their cup run. He definitely was. And I think in this resurgence, taking over in the fourth game from Billy Husso, he was part of the swagger again. And that swagger not only left, but so did the focus and the attention to detail that St. Louis has been able to play when they're at their best. I do think, as I said, I think there's still a lot of hockey to play in this series. And Kadri will continue to be a focal point because he's a really good player and he's playing really well. But all the other stuff, man, oh man, eliminate that from your head. What's behind is behind. Go forward, play hockey against them, and find a way to beat them.
I mean, listen, we know that at some point there'll be some sort of retribution, but I mean, you can't be focusing on that in game 4 on home ice of a series that you're down 2-1 in. And you're right. They got unhinged and it cost them. And we'll see how much hockey left. I mean, it could be 60 minutes. I mean, if the Blues can't do it again and win in Colorado, the Avs will be waiting for the winner of the Battle of Alberta. And hopefully that Battle of Alberta does go the distance, because the Battle of Florida was an absolute dud, Dave. The highest scoring team in the National Hockey League gets completely snuffed out by the two-time defending champs and Andrei Vasilevsky. What happened to the Panthers?
Not quite ready. Not quite ready. And, Andrew, when I get into it, I picked Tampa to go through the East. I mean, I think you're well aware of that. And, down to the way they perform, the way they operate. I mean, they're the best right now. I just think they are. Everybody's talking about how tired they are. And then now they're going to be even more dangerous. And if there's a team that can afford and understands 8 days off or whatever they're going to get now, it's them. And they're going to get it. And how dangerous that will be, knowing. So going into that first series, I think it's like they knew they were playing a really good team in Toronto. Would there have been ashamed or embarrassed to lose to the Toronto Maple Leafs in 7 games? I don't think there would have been shame or embarrassment attached. But the pride carried them through that series. They got better as the series went. Then they got through and they thought, okay, well, we just beat the team that, one of the best teams. And now we're going to face, so whether 2 of the top 5 teams or 2 of the top 4 teams, and we're going to face them. If we get through them, we become cup favorites, and we only have 2 series to win. And the goal at the end of the game 2, the Ross Colton goal from Kucherov, I think catapulted, vaulted, exploded them into the next 2 games like nothing else is possible. Now they've won 2 games on the road. They're coming home and they're saying, we're the team to beat, not Florida. We're the team to beat. It starts in net, but their defense is so good and so big and so physical. I think from a playoff performance standpoint over the last couple of years, if you were choosing the most underrated player in the playoffs, it'd be Ryan McDonagh. I just think
McDonagh's been great.
Such a horse.
Let me throw out a guy up front for Tampa as well that just you notice him more and more, especially in these big games, and that no one talks about is Cirelli.
Well, Cirelli complimented by, I'll see your Cirelli and I'll raise you a plat and a cologne. And it's like, come on. Now, I think part of it is their longevity. Their longevity together, Cirelli being the newest of them, the ingredients he brings. They're playing without Braden Point, Andrew. They're playing without one of the best players in the league right now.
No problem.
No, blink. Oh, let's throw Nick Paul in there. All 6'5" of him, and he's been great. But I look at their longevity of their group. Alex Killorn, 2007 draft pick by Tampa Bay, which I've said far too many times. People are like, wait a second, he was drafted in 2007? That's the longest standing member of the organization. And each year, next year we'll add a Steven Stamkos. The following year we'll add a Victor Hedman. We'll throw a Sergachev in there by way of trade with our third pick overall, and Jonathan Drouin, that didn't turn out. And then we'll grab a late Kucherov and a later Braden Point. And, Vasilevsky, late first round. Yeah, we're going to take him too. And just really well constructed. And not to digress, but cast an eye to one side and watch what that same general manager is doing now in Detroit with his big goalie and Costa and his defensemen and Edvinsson and Sider and Lucas Raymond up front. And, there's a formula that was in place once and it worked and is still working. And there's another one happening right now in Motor City.
Hey, Dave, just before we go, and I think people maybe haven't paid as much attention to this series as the others, but Carolina and the Rangers. Carolina is perfect at home and they're winless on the road. Does this one get tied up tonight by the Rangers? What do you think we've got in store for us in the series in the East that is still going on?
I think Carolina steps back tonight and makes it 3-1. I think they win their first game on the road. And that's part of the maturing of I know they've been there. They've been, through some rounds in the past, but this exact group hasn't. And I think they do get it done against the Rangers tonight. I like the way they've played. They're capable of winning different types of games. I like their depth. I like their defense as well. I do think they get it done against the Rangers tonight.
Dave, great chat as always. Thanks so much for the time. Keep up the great work with the boys on the panel, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the tube and having you back on the show real soon.
Thanks, Andrew. Enjoy the hockey.
Appreciate it. There it is. Our guy, Dave Poulin of TSN's hockey panel, doing a great job with Gino and the gang, night in and night out, and even taking out the May-long weekend to provide great hockey analysis for all of us. Great stuff with Dave. Well, we're going to get to more Barry Trotz talk, CFL, CFLPA with Jeff Hamilton coming up right now. But hey, a big cheers to our friends over at Culligan Water, the water experts. I know my folks were out going to the lake this weekend. They got the water for the summer, drove in there, good to go. And you can do that as well. I mean, plan ahead, whether it's for the home, the cottage, or the business. Culligan have you covered, and they've got it all. Water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, whole home systems, drinking water systems, and citywide water delivery services, as well as commercial and industrial water products and solutions. 1200 Sargent Avenue, and visit them online at drinkculligan.com. Hey, the gang at Manitoba Battery is ready for summer. They've got expanded hours right now until 8 p.m. weekdays, so you can pop at Manitoba Battery, get everything you need outside of your work hours to leave you more time to have fun on the weekends. And bottom line is you're going to be able to shop local and save big over the big box stores like Canadian Tire and Costco with the best prices in town of batteries of all sizes, makes, and models for whatever you need. So save time, save money, and shop local. Manitoba Battery, they're at 1026 Logan Avenue, 783-8787. Give them a call. They'll have everything ready for you to pick up quick and easy with extended hours open till 8 p.m. And of course, you can check them out online at manitobabattery.com. And the gang at Royal Sports is ready for summer as well. The expanded soccer section, a very busy spot right now. Obviously, soccer fans can pop in for the best selection of jerseys from around the world as well. But it's not just soccer right now. It's soccer, baseball, an expanded fitness center, and bikes coming in by the week, expanding the back of the spot, which is now basically taken over by all of the bike stock. So whatever you need, Royal Sports has you covered. Pop down and see him at 750 Pembina Highway. And of course, you can follow him on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sales. All right, let's get Jeff Hamilton in here because we have a lot to discuss today. Hammer, I was going to say how your weekend was, but I imagine between what was happening on the Jets beat and with the Canadian Football League and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, you were probably quite busy as opposed to just chilling around and turning the brain off for 3 days.
Yeah, the joys of covering multiple leagues came into play this weekend. I'm doing other stuff too that, work related that added to it. So it was a bit of a hectic weekend. It was nice to be outside on some of those days. But it's just a wild weekend, man. This is the wild time in sports, and when you have opportunity to share stories or information and people want it, it becomes an even busier weekend. But overall, an awesome weekend.
No doubt. It's nice outside, perfect for training camp. We'll get to training camp. We'll get to the CFL situation in a minute. But let's start off with your take on Trotz Watch. Of course, we mentioned earlier on there was a report of a tweet from a local Jets site that said Barry Trotz was being hired and it was happening today. Kind of said that this was either pathetic trolling, this was either a group that was maybe getting played by someone with some incorrect information, or maybe they're right and it's just taking a little bit longer. I don't know what the story is. You definitely did a lot of digging because everyone was asking. What can you tell us about the latest on Barry Trotz and where the Winnipeg Jets stand?
Yeah, well, first off, I saw those reports too, and I was like, whoa. I mean, to me, because of the chats I'd been having for days and in some cases, weeks, I was kind of like, oh, wow, that's they beat me on that. And not that it was, I just felt like it was a possibility. The timeline made sense because of what I was hearing. So I just kind of felt, okay, I've heard enough from enough people close enough to the situation, close enough to Trotz's camp that, let's put out what I'm hearing. And so what I was, I had a bit of a Twitter feed and had a story in the paper today, Twitter thread that is, about what I'm hearing. And what I'm hearing is ultimately, a couple different things. Some of the stuff isn't far out there. For instance, True North has put together, whether they called it an advisory committee or just, a group of people to find the next head coach, which is kind of what any good organization would do and does, I imagine, when it comes to finding a new leader. But what's interesting about it is understanding where True North fits in the mix. And I heard you kind of talking about that with Dave prior to me coming on here. And I think the big thing for True North right now and what they're getting advised is that they are in rare company. They might not be able to offer palm trees. They might not be able to offer, big amenities that bigger cities have. But what they can offer, and what I understand Barry Trotz is coveting is, whether you want to call it job security, whether you want to call it, potential to move up the corporate ladder. But he's interested in becoming, maybe becoming a general manager one day. And so if you look at some of the potential suitors out there, whether it's Philadelphia, whether it's Vegas, whether it's Detroit, whether it's Dallas, not a lot of opportunity to move in to a general manager position. Now, I'm not suggesting that Barry Trotz is coming in and banging down the doors and going, I want Kevin Cheveldayoff's job. But what I would suggest is that, the Jets can do a little bit, True North can do a little bit of moving around potentially in the future, whether Kevin Cheveldayoff wants to become, president of football, president of hockey operations, or whatever title he could have, whether he'll be with the team. I mean, lots of different possibilities we don't need to get into, but the Winnipeg Jets do offer, Barry Trotz, at least their organization, the way they're set up, an opportunity to grow within the team. The way I describe it is a bit of a long-term solution, right? All these other teams are looking for Barry Trotz, skill set as a head coach right now to push for a Stanley Cup to get their team back on track. Now, obviously, the Winnipeg Jets are looking for that as well. But I think it's the added part. It's the potential of climbing that corporate ladder to getting opportunities in management and settling in a home. And another thing I mentioned too, as far as Barry Trotz's priorities list is, a good community and city for his family. He has his youngest son, Nolan, has Down syndrome. He's a big part of the family's lives, obviously, and him feeling comfortable is a big piece of the puzzle for Barry Trotz. It was that case when he went to Washington. I imagine it was a big part of his decision to go, to New York. And one thing I will say about True North is that, we don't hear a lot about it, but I think they really do have a talent, if you will, to put together packages that fit for coaches. I know, Jamie Compton, for instance, what people may know, his wife is battling some health issues. The Jets, that was a big thing for him. And I mean, I heard him speak at a dinner one evening, just how well True North, made him feel. And he never used the word package or anything like that for him to come here, but, the lengths in which they went to accommodate, what he and his family needed. So I feel like the Jets have that experience. There's also the sense that Barry Trotz wants to find a home where he's not going to be dumped in 3 years. That's the life of an NHL hockey coach, to kind of have to pick up and do something else. Isn't always ideal for guys his age as he gets into his 60s here. So, I think there just is that potential. And what I'm hearing and what I've reported was, the advisory group has kind of, advised, Mark Chipman, Kevin Cheveldayoff that, not push in the sense of, give Barry Trotz an ultimatum, but show him that you're for, not just that you're for real, but show him that this is, where we want you to be. This is where we want you to be long term. And kind of get an answer from him, or try to get an answer from him sooner or later, because, as much as he is at the top of their priority list, they also need to think of other options down the stretch here. And they are in competition for other talents with teams across the league. So, there's a bit of that assurance of wanting to know where his head's at. So I believe that they reached out to him either Sunday or yesterday with an offer and with something, just again, to get, a better gauge of how things are going. I do know the meeting last week between the two went well. I think there was some added pitching to, maybe his wife and some, some other parts of it that I think, went across well. And ultimately, we know that Mark Chipman can definitely, not talk his way in a negative way, but we know he can offer and provide, a lot of comfort for people coming in. So that's kind of where it stands now. And I think it puts a little bit, again, whether it's the intention or not, puts a little bit of pressure on Barry Trotz that, he comes across to me as a guy that if he wants something, he's not going to waste other people's time. So I think the Jets, I think what their plan is to give him what he wants, to show him that he's, wanted here and the potential here, and then have him think it over before he starts going through meetings. It's just good business to not have him sit down in Philadelphia or sit down in, another city that, and get wooed, whether that be Vegas, right? We all know his relationship with Kelly McCrimmon and how far that goes back as being Manitobans or having a big piece of the puzzle in Manitoba hockey. So, to me, that's kind of where it stands. I mean, I did report on other potential, coaches that the Jets will be looking for, which I thought was a lot of interest. A lot of the names we've been hearing, like the Scott O'Neills, the people I've talked to haven't mentioned Alain Vigneault or Randy Carlyle, but they've been reported. The names that I'm hearing are as I said, Scott O'Neill, and this is in no particular order. Claude Julien, who I will add is out coaching Pierre-Luc Dubois and Adam Lowry at the World Championships in Finland. Derek Lalonde, who's been with Tampa Bay for years and is kind of John Cooper's right hand man. Kirk Muller, who's with Calgary. We've heard a ton of comparables between the Flames and the Winnipeg Jets, that under the right guidance, under the right head coach, the Jets can do exactly what Calgary did, and that's turn things around in a season. I'm hearing, I mentioned on your show before, Pascal Vincent, is gaining steam. He's an interesting guy because, he'd have to be a head coach hire because he's an associate coach at Columbus. I'm not sure he'd be allowed to entertain an assistant coach job or an associate coach position in Winnipeg, unless he was, unless Columbus wanted him gave him permission to do so. But I'm hearing great things from people in Columbus about what he's done. So I don't know if that's necessarily an opportunity. And then Spencer Carberry, he's a guy who's an assistant coach with Toronto. He's in charge of their power play, their lethal power play, mind you. And so he's another name. And, these are really, if you think about it, it's a great list. Now, head coaching positions and filling them are extremely fluid. One guy who may be on the radar might be off, in one phone conversation, another guy can certainly be added to the list. So by no means is this an end all be all list, but these are the names that I'm hearing. And another part of my report was Rick Bowness. His name's been tossed out there, not just with the Jets, but in general. As an assistant coach, the feeling is he's not going to be a head coach again in the NHL. From what I'm hearing from his camp is he wants to coach. I think he's fine with being an assistant coach. I think he's comfortable with it. It's just a matter of whether he'd be comfortable in returning to Winnipeg and getting that opportunity and helping kind of groom, if you will, the next guy, especially if you consider Barry Trotz. Now, part of that is a little bit confusing. There's so many moving parts that, usually a head coach comes in and decides his staff. I imagine if Barry Trotz accepts the job, he'll decide who is going to be on the bench with him. But I imagine if he is looking to get into a management position, which clearly he is, I think there is a little bit of talk to, okay, well, who's the up and comer? Who's the guy that's going to fill your shoes? I don't think they'd want to go with an outside hire in that situation. So lots of moving pieces, lots of interest. But to me, one of the biggest takeaways is just having Barry Trotz. I think he likes Winnipeg, and I think he's strongly considering it. And I think it might take a lot from another team. Like when I first heard that Barry Trotz was interviewing with Winnipeg, the thought was, well, is he leveraging money? Were the Jets going to throw a bag of cash at him and then he was going to go to Vegas or Philly, whoever he would interview with, and go, well, this is what Winnipeg's looking to pay me. Can you match it or go higher? Now I think it's, maybe he's leveraging it, being like, this is and again, I have no intel on this, no word about that, but it would be interesting to see if he could leverage the management aspect of it somewhere else. But again, I really think that's a tough sell for other markets. And, as much as Winnipeg might be viewed by some as not an ideal destination, all things considered, with not only what Barry Trotz wants, but where he's from, being a Dauphin, Manitoba native, and his father still being here and him getting up there in age, it's starting to feel like a real possibility that Barry Trotz could be with this team.
Well, let me ask you this, and I'm not sure whether you know this, but has another meeting taken place? Does he have the offer, if you will, from the Winnipeg Jets and is mulling it over right now? I mean, what do we know about where things are at? And, what's a realistic timeline for the Winnipeg Jets to complete their best pitch and get an answer one way or the other?
Yeah, so I'm led to believe that, I mean, they wanted to contact him either on Sunday or Monday. I'm told that they did have I don't think it was an in-person meeting. I don't know where Barry Trotz is, but I do believe they would have touched base. I don't know why they wouldn't use that opportunity to give him, a contract. So, a lot of people, people I've talked to are, when as far as it comes to a deadline, it's Thursday. Now Thursday being, I think the next time he's going to interview with a team, I'm not sure who he's got lined up for Thursday, but I think again, I think the ultimate goal here is to give him, an offer he can't refuse or has to think incredibly hard at, and convince him before he sits down with another team. So, I don't think we're looking at anything today. I'm not sure we're looking at anything tomorrow, but as the days creep on here, I do think we could get some movement. That being said, if nothing's discussed or nothing's no news is broken on Thursday that he's taken a job with the Winnipeg Jets, I don't think that means that he isn't considering it still. I just think it's, he's moving along with his process, and at the very least doing himself justice by hearing other teams out, and so but again, I do think in the next couple of days there could be, I'm not guaranteeing anything or suggesting that it's going to be a yes or no come Thursday. But if you look at the reports on where he's going to be, where he's going to be interviewing for jobs and the interest he's garnering, you have to think that, that's at least a good idea to find out if he's all in with Winnipeg or just considering them as one of the options.
Jeff Hamilton, the Winnipeg Free Press, with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Hey, what do we know about the advisory committee? How big is it? And are there people from outside the organization as well, or is it all internal, all hands on deck?
Yeah, so I don't know a ton of names. Obviously, Mark Chipman would be on it. Kevin Cheveldayoff would be on it. I imagine some of their, obviously, members within them. I think there's a lot of, people they employ, scouts, people just smart hockey minds. Like Mark Chipman is a very in tune guy in the NHL. He's, this is somebody who may very well, chair the NHL board of governors one day. So, he's very connected. He has very, a lot of hockey people that he trusts. I don't have specific on who's on the committee. But I do imagine just from the people I'm talking to, they have advisors who aren't necessarily every day. I imagine again that it would be people who are in-house who work with them every week. But I imagine there's a couple other people that are brought on as advisors, to bring in their intel and information on different prospects, not just Barry Trotz, but other people as well. So I don't know exactly who's on that list. Just that there's a an advisory board that would be advising Mark Chipman and the powers that be on how to act.
One other little bit of Jet news that Remis and I talked about earlier on, but looks like Christian Vesalainen is gonzo, signing for next year in the Swedish league. We'll still find out whether the Jets qualify him to retain his rights. I can't say that this was too surprising. He had a great opportunity this year. It didn't go well for him. And, maybe going back to Europe is the best spot for Vesalainen, although doesn't really help the Jets depth-wise when it comes to the organization for sure. Any thoughts on Ves?
Yeah, I obviously saw, the comments. It seemed like, whether, seemed like there was debate as far as, whether he got enough opportunity to show his skills. Obviously, if no fan base is going to be happy when, a first round, no matter where they were selected in that round, doesn't ultimately pan out. I mean, personally, I felt Christian Vesalainen had enough opportunity, or at least, for sure. I don't know if it was this season or last season. They blur together, this past season or the season before. But he really did get an opportunity, particularly in this season at a training camp. Like they wanted him to be a trigger guy. They wanted, they put him in an opportunity to show off that shot that he has, and it just never panned out. And whether you want to argue, he should have logged more, top 6 minutes, that, you hold, you give guys, like him a leash. Well, not really when you have a team like the Winnipeg Jets and you're as gifted as you are offensively. And I would argue that he did get some of that opportunity. Clearly, he's not a guy that became, one of those third line pieces, alongside Adam Lowry and like we've seen so many guys do, jump up to the top 6. But it is a bit of a shame. I mean, not just for the Winnipeg Jets, but for him too, that things didn't exactly work out at the NHL level. He's not old, so who knows what the future has in store here, but you have to think that his time in Winnipeg is over.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, 53 games, 2 goals, 1 assist. I mean, certainly was in the lineup, and we can talk about how much those lines played and whatnot. But I mean, listen, if you're playing with Adam Lowry, you're getting significant minutes, and they were looking for someone to, provide a physical element to that line and produce, and it didn't happen. And I think many people thought that, I mean, certainly if you compare many other young players in the organization to Vesalainen for what was presented to them at the NHL level this year, most of the other players would have traded that opportunity in a heartbeat, and it didn't go well. Jeff Hamilton's with us. Listen, Hammer, I do want to get to the CFL story with you. I just very quickly, I know you're a good friend of our pal Nick. We are back in blizzard weather here, folks, on a good kind, not the blizzards we've been talking about for 7 months. Hit up the Nick and Nicky DQ, any one of the 4, the DQ Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, or DQ St. Anne's for the great taste of summer, the Dairy Queen Blizzard. May I also suggest check out one of their brand new stack burgers as well. And if you do have an event, maybe a little party coming up for the weekend, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. They'll take your order, get it custom made for you to pick up at any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQ locations. Our friends at Knott Auto Corp are ready for the summer. If you think it's about time to get into a new whip, before you do anything, pop down and see our friends at Knott Auto Corp, as well as you can find out more on the Tesla Experience They Have program if you're considering moving over to an electric vehicle. Bottom line is, why not get into the car of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Knott team? Pop down and see them at Waverly and McGilvery or online at knott.ca. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to be heading down. We are planning a little event at some point in the next little while over at Little Brown Jug. We'll have more details on that in the coming weeks. But Little Brown Jug has just launched a cider. fermented for 4.5 months from cold-pressed apples from an Ontario orchard using a mix of wild and cultured yeast. It's dry and refreshing and gluten-free. And that's just one of many new Little Brown Jug products, including the Queer Beer, Saison, Hefeweizen, and Folkfest Lager. Stop by their taproom or patio on William Avenue to try one of their delicious new brews. And of course, you can also order for home delivery Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays at littlebrownjug.ca. All right, Hammer, we thought we had a deal. Everything was done. The players were back on the field. And then we find out that the deal between the CFL and the CFLPA was not ratified by the players. What the hell is going on?
Yeah, so I will say this before I get into that. I got a cake from Nick this week. It was the Blizzard Reese's. It was amazing. So definitely shout out to Nick. You know what? It was crazy to think that we were going to get into a strike. And then it was even crazier to think that once all the whatever you want to call it, reality TV show that it became or sideshow that it became with the public arguing and all those things. I mean, after that, you didn't think that it was going to get down to a no vote. And so there's a couple different things here at play. One, between 30 and 35% of eligible voters never voted. So, and if you listen
great look.
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at probably who did vote, and it would probably be mostly Canadians, well, then it kind of makes sense that 1/3 of why this would have got shot down. Now, the two big issues are around the ratio, specifically around. As it turned out, for those who don't know, the original deal was no ratio. Obviously, that was a joke. And then it was 6, instead of 7 Canadian starters, it was going to be 6 Canadian starters with a 7th that was eligible for the naturalized Canadian, which is ultimately an American with 3 years experience on that team or 5 years in the league. And so that wasn't viewed as a get by the PA. I was talking to a bunch of Canadians. Some, Jake Thomas is the player rep for the Bombers. Talking to Adam Bighill, that was a sticking point. They don't want, whether it's the Canadians don't want to be that group that starts this ball rolling towards eliminating the ratio, because that's the real fear here. It's not that, oh my gosh, we lost one. Lost one starting position for Canadian. It's like, okay, so we've lost one this time around. What's the next negotiation going to be? 2 or 3 positions lost, and then so on and so forth, right? So there was a real fear out of that. And then they made it 8 national starters with one being a naturalized American. So they almost created this new position that would count as, where it would at least bring at least one American into the mix, where they would be treated as if they were Canadian and therefore paid more. So there was kind of a happy medium. And then they added in that negotiation, the one that was ultimately, given the thumbs up by the negotiating committee in the CFL and by the executive committee of the Players Association, included 3 additional naturalized Canadians who could play up to 49% of the snaps. Now, I don't know about you, but I've been trying to wrap my brain around this thing since it's been announced, and I just don't get it. On one hand, I don't know how you count the snaps, and on the other, I also don't know how many teams would have those kind of players that already weren't starters. Like, you're telling me you're going to have a guy who's played 5 seasons in the CFL not be a guy who you start on offense or defense, or even a guy you've had for 3 seasons. Now, there's probably more likelihood of the guy to be 3 seasons, because we know guys dress, they play special teams. You can add up those years pretty quickly. But if you weren't good enough to get a starting position, at that point, what makes you think that you're going to be good enough to then steal it from a Canadian? Now, it's certainly possible. Anyways, I think there was so much confusion around how that would apply, what teams might do to circumvent those rules and whatever, that I think that same fear that the Canadian players had in the 6-1, naturalized Canadian came back thinking like, oh no, like if maybe we're not thinking this through, maybe in 3 or 4 years, all of a sudden this is coming back to bite us in the ass, and we agreed to this. So then what do we move on? So I think that became a major sticking point. Another one was a ratification bonus. I didn't even know a ratification bonus was on the table, but I guess in previous negotiations it had been. So what a ratification bonus is ultimately players getting cash compensation for voting through the new CBA. And so I think that was a contention in some different markets. And I think that's another takeaway here, is that it's not like every single issue is identical, just like every market isn't identical in each CFL city. So I think we were talking to players today. Some had issues with dental and eye coverage. Others had the restoration or ratification bonus that was an issue. Others had had the ratio, and it was an accumulation of all of the above in some ways too. Not to mention the fact that 30 to 35% of the eligible voters, I imagine many of which would have been American, didn't actually vote, and that's why we're here. I think the good news is, we're going to get to a deal fairly quickly. I don't think we will see games played or postponed or canceled this weekend. I think there's just too much at stake, and I just think there's too easy of a solution here, which could be as simply as going back to the 6-1. That I think that we'll get a deal here going, and we will finally get back to business as usual.
I know it was reported, I believe John Hodge over at 3 Down had the CFL had tabled a new offer today. Do we have any idea what's in that, how different it is for it? And just speaking of your confidence that something gets done, I mean, what needs to happen and what's happening behind the scenes? I imagine this was a real eye-opener for a good portion of the membership of the CFLPA when they heard the news.
Well, look, I mean, as far as the deal goes, I do think that, as John reported, it has to do with, and others too, that it's going back to that 6-1, right? Because as daunting as that may feel, I mean, it's a 7-year deal and it's one. If you want to make that a wedge issue next time you negotiate, fine. Wait in 7 years and be like, no, like we're not doing this every time we negotiate a new CBA, maybe every second one, right? I mean, there's ways of of understanding from and appeasing ultimately the Americans and the Canadians. Now that's the big storyline coming out of this, right? You ask about the reaction amongst players and the membership, and you had a lot of, our colleagues going out on social media and kind of painting this out as, screw Canadian players, that, they I don't want to say screw Canadian players, but like, those are the guys that are doing this. Well, that's not the case. There's some Canadians that voted for this deal, and there's some Americans that voted against it. That being said, it'd be naive to suggest that this wouldn't create a division. I mean, we've already seen stuff on social media. I mean, Simone Lawrence is one of the best players in the CFL, and he went off last night about Canadian players not putting in the same amount of work as Americans, and how he has things he says to Canadian players on the field. Like, I don't know what the hell that's all about, but if I'm a member of the Hamilton Tiger Cats and I'm Canadian, I'm not loving that, that statement by him. You're saying you go up to Canadians and diss them because of where they live. That's not going to fly in the CFL, or at least amongst the Canadian guys. And so, I think there was a bit of an animosity amongst American players, that it was voted down. I don't think anybody is going to, or very few rather, are going to come out and share their feelings like Simone Lawrence did. I think that's something you don't really do. You don't want to create that wrinkle in your team, but we'll see how that plays out. There's always been, a healthy, how would I word it? A bit of a divide between American and Canadians, who Americans know right away. And if they don't know, they soon find out, why somebody is starting over them, or why someone's getting paid significantly more than them, and how it has to do with their Canadian passport. So, seeing things like this get shot down, where it works against Americans ultimately, I think, it's only natural that you might be upset about it, but, that remains to be seen. I think that, those comments were a bit premature on social media. I mean, again, I think there is potential for that to be a bit of an issue, but at the same time, this is the Canadian Football League. There's a reason why those rules are in place, whether you agree with them or don't agree with them. And as an American player, yes, we'd love, I think the league would love to have more Americans make CFL their home and help sell the game and all those things. But the bread and butter of the CFL is Canadians. And, I think this vote kind of shows how important it is to a lot of the Canadians that play this game.
Well, no doubt about it. I guess what I'm wondering is because this in a lot of ways was a direct vote against the people that negotiated this deal and put it together. How do they bridge this divide? How do they get this group together in a timely fashion to avoid disaster, Jeff? And is there one or two individuals that could be the champions or that will be very key in building this bridge, getting it done, and doing it now?
Well, I do really think that there was potential that had the 30% of people voted, we wouldn't even be dealing with this issue right now. It could have, and I can't speak definitively on that. I don't have the voting numbers, but that's the belief among a lot of players. As for your comment about the disconnect, there's very clearly a disconnect between the executive committee and the membership. Now, how big of a disconnect? I'd argue not that big of one. I look at a guy like Adam Bighill, who is a big part of that executive committee negotiating against the league, and this guy is putting tons of time in. He's putting his whole off season was much of his off season was dedicated to getting all players, including Canadian and American, a good deal, and they made a lot of strides in a lot of important areas, including salary cap increase, including 5 years. Now that doesn't kick in for a couple of years into the deal, but 5 years of medical coverage. They already went from 1 to 3 in the last negotiation in 2019. To guaranteed contracts. I didn't even think that would ever be on the table. But here we are, now that will be happening. Now it needs to be negotiated between the players and the team. It's not like every guy that signs, re-signs with a club is guaranteed, half his salary of the final year, which is ultimately the max you can offer. But it is a step in the right direction, and it does help some guys, whether you're a $65,000-$70,000 player, or a $500,000 player, getting some job security in a contract. Because if they do cut you, you get to keep all that half that money, while capable of signing with other teams. So there was lots of big wins, if you will, in it. That it kind of to look at it being a complete disconnect would be unfair. To suggest they didn't know what their membership wanted would be unfair. But I think it does speak to, as I mentioned, not long ago, that it speaks to a little bit of the different wants in each market, that maybe they weren't getting, weren't able to please everybody, if you will. And again, it could be as simple as the 30-something percent that didn't vote could have tipped it over to being a ratified CBA, or it could be bigger than that. And so, that's ultimately what Adam Bighill said today, is that they're still, at the negotiating table. There would be, just because the CFL has presented a new offer, doesn't mean it will be, accepted, not even by a vote, but just verbally with the membership, because clearly something hit a roadblock here. So there's, as much as there has been progress in these negotiations, and count me as one of the people who believe something will get done sooner than later. There's still a bit of work here to approve it and to ensure that everybody's happy.
Well, here's fingers crossed that the next time we speak next week, we're talking about what's happening on the field at Bomber training camp and not what's happening off the field right now. And heck, if anything happens with a certain highly in-demand head coach this week, we've always got an extra spot to prop you back on if you want to talk about it, Hammer. I know you're real busy. Thanks so much for the time. Of course, folks, check out Jeff's reporting on both the Jets head coaching search and everything going on with the CFL and the CFLPA over at Winnipeg Free Press. Thanks for doing this, dude.
Hey, Huss, thanks for having me on, as always. I don't know if you saw it, but
looking good.
Finally got this fitted. It feels really good. It's like, the way I describe it, if I had to put a review on it, it'd be like a hug. It's just a nice fitted fitted hoodie that's
considering
looks
it,
great too,
that's
so.
your hug for myself and Remis every single time you put that on, Jeff. We love you that much.
Awesome. Well, it's mutual, guys. Thanks so much, and shout out to the commenters. Hopefully they didn't roast me too much today.
No. Popular guy as always. Just your Q rating continues to go up in the chat each and every time you join us. Kate, thanks a lot, dude.
Thank you.
Oh, great stuff. There is our good friend, Jeff Hamilton. Well, as I mentioned, we're back on the golf course today. Saw a bunch of my friends out at Breezy Bend yesterday. Oh, man, it is great to finally get some spring-type weather. Great next few days is the weather forecast, so get out there. If you're thinking about a great home for you and your family, for your golfing future, talk to Corey over at Breezy Bend about this season and opportunities for next as well. Great junior programs for women, practice facility, course improvements, clubhouse, best 19th hole in Manitoba golf. It's all there for you over at Breezy Bend. And again, congratulations to Justin Thomas for winning the PGA Championship on the weekend. I popped by Boston Pizza yesterday with a friend. I got to give a special shout out to Callista, the bartender at the Taylor BP, who actually came, noticed that we were watching the game, and asked us if we'd like the sound on for the game. That is such an elite move of a sports bar. So thank you to our friends at Boston Pizza Taylor. And again, that's why BP is the best place to go and catch the game with your gang. You can order those gourmet pizzas, Boston wings, ice cold schooners. And heck, if you are staying home, you can also always get it online at bostonpizza.com. Make sure to check out their great game day deals. And hey, one more week till we're back horsing around at the track. Assiniboia Downs Live Racing is back 1 week for today, beginning their schedule, which will normally run Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. The Prime Rib Buffet is back this year, and it's going to be full fields, great chances to win big out at the Downs. And up until that point, you can always get an account over at hpibet.com to bet on tracks around the world, as well as mobile wagering on races over at Assiniboia Downs. All right, we've talked a lot of Jets. We've talked about the CFL issue. Let's talk about what's happening on the ice tonight. Game 4, Battle of Alberta. The Connor McDavid show continues to roll. And our good friend, handsome Tommy Gazzola, joins us now from TSN in Edmonton. Well, how was the weekend in Edmonton? I imagine it was a pretty festive scene coming off the win in Calgary in Game 2. The big win on Sunday night. And I know from listening and talking to Dusty earlier today, people are ready to go for tonight. Probably good times around Northern Alberta right now, Tom.
I went to pick up groceries yesterday morning thinking it's a long weekend. Everything should be nice and quiet, which it was. But a lot of people needed groceries as well. And I looked around as I'm shopping and I'm like, why is everybody wearing sunglasses at 9 a.m. on a holiday Monday inside a Safeway? And sure enough, I was like, must have been a heck of a night in good old our town. And you know what? It was a really good weekend for Oiler fans after a couple of wins. And I thought that summed it up in a funny way. And then down at the rink today, I'm looking inside the plaza where they have the watch parties. And that whole thing is it's just loaded with water. They had to scrub it because of how much fun people were having at the watch party. So I think those are two good indicators as to what kind of weekend it was in Edmonton.
Well, and listen, justifiably so. I mean, there's no better time than the playoffs if you're a hockey fan and your team is in it. And we were talking about it for weeks heading into this potential matchup between the Oilers and Flames, that it's exponentially ratcheted up when it's Edmonton versus Calgary.
Yeah.
And listen, I thought the Oilers stunk in game number 1. I thought they were pummeled in just about every single aspect of the game. However, it was interesting to note that Jacob Markstrom had a real rough night. I left that game thinking, I don't know how Edmonton wins a series. They finally get 6 goals and they still don't win the game. But I got to tell you, we saw it in Game 6 and Game 7 against the Kings, and we are continuing to see it. Connor McDavid, the best player in the world, putting his team on his back, and if it's possible, continuing to elevate his game. Tom, you've covered this guy since he came into the league. I mean, what do you make of the show that McDavid's putting on right now through these playoffs? I mean, putting up historic numbers and having his team 2 wins away from the Final Four.
It's incredible to watch, first of all. I think that's an understatement. And obviously, we all feel the same way, whether you're watching him live or you're watching him on TV. It's like in the NHL video game series, if you were basically holding down the boost button the entire time. That's Connor McDavid. Like, he can do that. He's the cheat code, as they say. But I felt like in game 6 and 7 at the end of that Kings series, that was like the start of McDavid starting to write his legacy in the postseason. And that chapter of his career, those were the first couple of chapters. And then I didn't know what to expect. I expected him to be very good in this series. And then, like you said, that was a terrible game 1 for the entire team. They tied the game 6-6 in game 1 early in the third period and didn't even feel like they were still in it. Sure enough, Calgary came back a minute and a half later and scored and then took over the game, and it was done anyway. But he's stepped it up again. And it just seems like anything Calgary tries to throw at Connor McDavid, he's got an answer for it. He's got a new trick up his sleeve. He does something absolutely crazy. Huss, you're watching him and he's faking out their defenseman, the Calgary defenseman, every time he gets a chance. I saw a stat that, he's had 37 attempted control or zone entries, and 34 of them he's been successful with, and that's leading the playoffs. Like, he's getting everything he wants on the ice. He's just dictating the play. That's how good he's been, and just dominant through and through. So what kind of show he's going to put on tonight, who knows? Buckle up, because it's going to be crazy. I mean, this has just been incredible to watch.
Maybe the biggest beneficiary of the greatness of McDavid is our old pal, the Natural, who had a natural hat trick on the weekend. Evander Kane's story is wild. Listen, he's been a jerk in other places before. There's a lot of people that don't like him. This was a true chance at reclamation of his career, maybe some bit of redemption. To Evander's credit, he's apparently, been a good teammate, and he's certainly doing it on the ice. Such a unique package, Tom, with the speed that he has, the physicality, and his ability to score. And listen, I know people were maybe surprised that he chose Edmonton, but for a guy that was trying to reclaim his career, doing it alongside 97, the smartest move he ever made. But man, he continues to pay dividends. You've seen him throughout the season, but is he benefiting from McDavid? And how much is McDavid benefiting from having a guy like Kane to play with?
This has been a match made in heaven. I know it could be a temporary one, but you know what? This was a player, obviously, like you said, Haas, and you've had interactions with him in his time in Winnipeg, where he needed this. Like, his career was on the line, and this opportunity that Ken Holland and the Oilers presented him was a perfect way to kind of get things back on track, and he's done that perfectly. So, yes, he's benefited from playing with Connor McDavid, as most do, but he's probably the best winger that Connor McDavid has had. And yes, you could throw Leon Draisaitl up there as the best winger, but Leon Draisaitl is a centerman. So outside of Draisaitl, Evander Kane's the best winger that he's ever played with in his time as an Oiler. And it's been a mutually beneficial partnership, and how long it lasts, we shall see. But right now it's going very well. And the other thing too, Huss, that Kane has really brought to the table is he has the skill, obviously. That ability to score beautiful goals is great. He scores greasy goals. That's great. That's something that Edmonton sorely lacked. We could point to last season in the postseason between the Jets and the Oilers. The Oilers' depth was exposed, or their lack thereof. So Kane has added to that, and his physicality, the confidence that he brings. There's so many elements that he's brought to the table for this Oilers team that's benefited the group. And then on top of that, yeah, he's benefiting from playing with Connor McDavid. They read off each other really well, and that's great. But so too does Kane read off of Leon Draisaitl when he gets opportunities to play with him. This is a good situation. It's created depth down the lineup. The ripple effect is there. And on top of that, I would say another guy that's benefited from all of this too is Zach Hyman, who can slot in either on the top line or on the second line. And
he's been so good, man. He's been exactly what they needed. Like, even in the game, even in game 1, he was, I mean, listen, we'll kind of, McDavid's McDavid, but I mean, of the rest of the guys, he was the one guy that seemed to be engaged, that was still there, was making things happen. And, often you'll see those free agent signings where you bring a guy in at a pretty big ticket for the contract of his career and they don't come through. Hyman's been everything that the Oilers hoped this season. And, especially right now when you really make your money, he's shown that he's playoff ready, and he's been a big, big addition as well as Evander.
His motor's always running. And then, like Kane, he scores greasy goals. He scores them in the tough areas. He's willing to go there. And his puck possession game is phenomenal. The work he does below the goal line, it's just stuff that, it's really enlightened and opened up a lot of Oiler fans to what this team was lacking. A lot of them knew, but to actually see it in action where it's like, oh, that's what a good cycle looks like. That's what puck retrievals looks like. Those two have really been a huge benefit to this team. And it's good for the Oilers that they have Hyman locked up for a few more years, obviously. And then, with Kane, we'll see. But those guys play playoff style hockey and can have success. And the consistent wave after wave of attack is something you need, especially against Calgary. And it's proved beneficial to the Oilers. And they've gotten to Jacob Markstrom. And Huss, speaking of Markstrom really quickly, this is one of the best goalies in the league this year, obviously a Vezina finalist, but
against everyone except Edmonton.
Exactly. Edmonton has touched him up for going into that last game. In the 6 games that the Oilers and Flames had played, they had gotten 5+ against Markstrom in the season series this year. And then they got him for 4, and he doesn't finish the game. They have to throw in Dan Vladar to finish up. So for whatever reason, the Oilers have the book on Markstrom, and I'm sure he's going to try to come back with a great game tonight. And it'll be a challenge for the Oilers to crack him again. But they've found a way against Markstrom, despite how good he's been against the rest of the National Hockey League.
Well, and part of the reason why I was on Calgary to win this series is because I thought they had a big, big advantage in the net. And that simply has not been the case. I still don't trust Mike Smith, but I'll tell you what, they haven't gotten anything close to a conference championship level game from their goaltender, and that's going to be it. But regardless of Markstrom, what have you made of the Flames the last couple games, as well as what they've had to say after the game, seemingly trying to convince themselves that it's just one guy that's beating them? Because it hasn't, as great as McDavid's been, it hasn't just been McDavid. And a lot of this is probably self-inflicted by the Flames in the way they've played in these last 2 games.
Yeah, you look at McDavid and they say, okay, the one guy's having a good game, or they're focused on one guy. But McDavid wasn't even anywhere close to the top in minutes played last game. There was a bunch of guys ahead of him. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins played a ton. Leon Draisaitl played a whole bunch. Hyman played a whole bunch. And McDavid, when he's been out there, has been totally effective, absolutely. But, the gamesmanship has been happening. We were joking about the Yari Curry ballroom at the team hotel where the Flames are staying, and the PR team had put in the Lanny McDonald room and renamed it. Just the little things like that. It makes it interesting for guys like us in the media, but at the same time, you're right. You start to think, are they in the Flames' heads a little bit? And is that really true that just one guy's beating him? I don't necessarily believe so. Draisaitl set a record for assists in a period the other night with 4. He's doing pretty darn
on one
good
leg
too. Yeah, on one leg, and his leg seems to be getting better. So it's not just Connor McDavid. Is Connor McDavid a monster part of it? Yeah, obviously. Did we know that going in? Yes, clearly. It's always the storyline, but there's other guys too that are playing very, very well. I'll even mix in Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who played good. Evan Bouchard's been good the last couple of games. Duncan Keith has been good. Cody Ceci. They're getting the best performances from a lot of the guys not named Connor McDavid, and I think that goes a long way in helping establish Edmonton's 2-1 lead.
Sort of a warm welcome will Milan Lucic receive tonight at Rogers Arena?
Well, they did like him for a time here, but I don't know. It was interesting. He did hold back, and I have a lot of time for Milan Lucic. He was great to deal with when he was an Oiler. He's still great to deal with now. Let's not kid ourselves. Yes, he took a run at Mike Smith. Nobody's denying that. But if he really wanted to wallop Mike Smith, he would have and could have. He's good. He knows how to stir it up. So I'm sure the fans will be on him. I'm sure the fans will be on Jacob Markstrom. I'm sure they're going to be on Johnny Gaudreau. The vibe in that building the other night, was the best I've ever seen it. And, 2017 was really good. And there's been some moments this season. Game 7 against LA was excellent, but there was just something about it the other night. I think it is because it's the Battle of Alberta. and the way the Oilers played, like it was on a whole new level, which is incredible. So I'm sure there's going to be some Bronx cheers for Milan Lucic because Oiler fans are loud and they're proud, and they'll let their emotions take them away.
Well, this game tonight, I mean, to me is the series. I think if Edmonton wins this, they're in a great position to finish it off. If Calgary wins, it gets back to a best of 3 with 2 on home ice. And I certainly expect the best effort of the series tonight from the Calgary Flames. I think they come out as a desperate team with a real sense of urgency. And I think that's the only way they're going to win this game tonight. What are you looking for from the visitors tonight coming off those 2 straight losses?
Yeah, one of the things that has been discussed, whether it was here in Edmonton or back in Calgary, was it doesn't seem like the Flames are playing their style of game, and that's moving up and down the ice in group of 5, pardon me, and attacking as 5, defending as 5, and Edmonton's has found a way to get through it. And again, yes, a lot of it's McDavid establishing the forecheck, controlling the puck, taking it into the zone. The Oilers have done a good job of that, and they found seams through the Flames, something that they weren't able to do that much against LA, because LA defended a ton with their 1-3-1, and they stymied Edmonton with their system to a certain extent. Calgary hasn't been able to do that, and it's been the Oilers dictating the play. So I know the Flames have talked about their 5-man unit and starting to play like that. If they do, then they'll get their chances, but Edmonton has been pretty good at not allowing it to happen. So if the Oilers, move pucks out efficiently from their own zone, which they have been able to do, and they're good with the transition game, and they're able to disrupt Calgary's transition game, because we know Calgary has a lot of speed and skill and can control the play going up the ice. That's where Edmonton has had some success in games 2 and 3, and will need to try to continue to do so. But if Calgary's able to establish that, I think they're going to get some opportunities. And you're right, you can get to Mike Smith. He's been beaten in this postseason a bunch of times. When he's been really good, he's been really good. But he is not a brick wall back there. But he's been steady and stingy, but you can get to him.
No doubt about it. Tom Gazzola is with us, folks. If you want more great Oilers content throughout the playoffs, make sure to check out the Oil Stream with Tommy and our guy Dustin Nielsen with content coming out every couple days. Hey, just before we go, we're talking a lot about coaching searches right now.
Yep.
And, the comparisons of the Jets and Oilers are so fascinating from this past year. I mean, those 2 games at the end of November where they were both near the tops of their division and the West, the complete bottoming out over the next little while, and the 2 coaching changes. The Winnipeg Jets had an assistant, Dave Lowry, take over on an interim basis. The Oilers went a very different way. They hired Jay Woodcroft. They brought along Dave Manson from the farm team. What do you remember? What was the initial reaction from Oiler fans about the choice of Jay Woodcroft as coach when he was hired? And is it safe to say he's now the 2nd or 3rd most popular resident of Edmonton outside of 97 and maybe Leon Draisaitl?
Yeah, I mean, it was a tumultuous time because the Oilers had kind of crept their way back into winning games right before the All-Star break. And then they come out of the break and they went back-to-back on home ice. It was Vegas and Chicago, and they lost those games. And so any momentum they had prior to the break was essentially gone. And then the next day, Dave Tippett was fired, and Jay Woodcroft was getting the call up. And talking to Woodcroft, he didn't even expect it. He was, keeping tabs on the big club, and he wasn't sure what was going on. He thought things had been going good until the All-Star break, and he got the call and had to scramble and make his way up here with Dave Manson. So I think it was a wake-up call and a shock to the system from the group's perspective, which they needed. And he's also gotten their attention. Clearly, he's tweaked a couple of things a little bit, and he's got the buy-in, which has been huge. And the focus on the little things in the team's overall game, 200 by 85, has been heightened. And that attention to detail has gone a long way. It's incredible what he's been able to do. But I honestly, didn't know how it would go with Jay Woodcroft. I mean, there were certain points in this season where they won 2 out of 16 games, and you're like, I don't know if Jay Woodcroft in this situation is an ideal one for a first-time NHL head coach. Maybe they got to get in somebody temporarily. to finish out the season. I thought maybe they would be reluctant to get rid of Dave Tippett, considering Ken Holland's time in the National Hockey League, not firing a coach mid-season. And sure enough, it was the first time for everything, and he pulled it off. And Woodcroft came in, made those tweaks. However daunting the situation was, he put his head down, got to work, and it's been effective. It's been incredible, truly. And a lot of the fans wanted Woodcroft. Some wanted the bigger name guys that were out there. Some pointed at Paul Maurice to draw in that connection to Winnipeg and make it closer. And then some wanted guys like Mike Babcock and player or coaches who had been floating around like that. And it turns out that Jay Woodcroft was the solution, the internal solution. And I think he's going to get a contract. And sure, it's not done yet, but as he puts it, they'll take it one day at a time.
8:30 tonight, Winnipeg time. Game 4, the Battle of Alberta. Don't miss it. Tommy, great having you back on the program. Let's do this again soon.
Thanks for having me, Haas. Always good to be on with you.
Appreciate it. Give him a follow on Twitter at Tom Gazzola. And as I said, make sure to check out the Oils stream for the latest on the Oilers with Tommy and our boy, Dustin Nielsen. All right. Hey, great crowd today, by the way, in the chat. Shout out to everyone. And if you haven't already hit that red subscribe button, do us a favor. We are approaching 7,000 subscribers, which is great. Totally free, of course. You'll get it up into your feed each and every day. And of course, if you want, you can turn your notifications on, which lets you know every day, Monday to Friday, when we are live. And by the way, hit that thumbs up button too while you're at it. All right, we're going to get Remis back in here in just a second. There still is a Bomber game scheduled for Friday. We'll get more clarity on where things are at probably in the next 24, 48 hours. But fingers crossed, everything goes on as planned. And that'll be the first time we can get a Princess Auto tailgate party outside of IG Field before every Blue Bomber game this season. And Princess Auto, in addition to being great supporters of our local teams, is also the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. You can visit them at one of 2 Winnipeg locations, Panet Road and Portage Avenue West, or shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. I don't know about you folks, but I did crack a couple CC and Gingers on the weekend. The great new addition to the ready-to-drink beverage market from our friends at Canadian Club. It really will be the drink of the summer. Grab a 6-pack and try it out at your local Manitoba liquor marts or your local beer store right now. Don't worry about mixing it. Just grab a cooler and a little bit of ice, and you are set for a great summer day with Canadian Club, CC, and Ginger ready to drink. All right, we're going to get to the Coolbet lines in a minute. We'll look at these games tonight, but let's get Michael Remis back in here because, Remo, obviously we hit all the big stories of the day with Hammer, with Jeff, and of course with Dave, and then of course the Battle of Alberta with Tommy G. We do have though some news from the World Championships, and it's a bit of a romp today for Canada, who is looking very, very good at the World Championships, thumping the French. But yesterday it was the big upset, Denmark's first ever win over Canada, led by both Nikolai Ehlers and head coach Dad Heinz Ehlers. Kind of a shocking result last night as we get closer to the playoff round. But if Canada was going to lose to anyone at the World Championships, I'm in on Denmark. You have to be happy for Nick, his dad, especially after not being able to participate in the Olympics, which Denmark qualified for the first time ever.
Yeah, first time ever beating Canada. Pretty cool. We all have a soft spot for Denmark because of Nikolai Ehlers. Couple other milestones to note from the Worlds. Names from the past. Frans Nielsen played his final game with Denmark today. Former shootout specialist with the Islanders, signed a long contract with the Red Wings. As well, you mentioned Canada over France. It was Cristobal Huet's final game for France. You remember him, goalie with Montreal.
Kings.
And who else? Montreal and
L.A.
And there's one of the Chicago, I believe. Chicago too, Cristobal Huet. So I remember him, and a couple. Adam Lowry tearing it up. He had he had a assist yesterday for them. Dubois with 2 goals today. Adam Lowry another point. Ehlers had an assist, and Nate Schmidt making impact as well. and USA's win over Norway.
Lowry and Dubois are having just phenomenal tournaments, and I'm really happy for Adam Lowry. I mean, he plays a certain role here with the Winnipeg Jets, and hasn't had a lot of international opportunities in the past. And hey, hopefully this is the only time he'll have the opportunity, because the Jets are playing in the playoffs for the next number of years. But for him to be able to make that team and play, I think he's got 7 points in 6 games so far, Remis. I mean, he's really showing, maybe a little bit more, an extra club in the bag. Although, for my money, I thought Adam Lowry played some of his best hockey as a Jet in the second half of this season, when he really got the scoring touch going, was very, very dangerous on the PK. And he's been a big, big part of Canada. The results are like the Swiss are having a heck of a tournament. The Swiss are 6-0 right now in Group A. The Germans are 5-0-1. Canada now at 4-2. So they're in a pretty good spot going into the final games of the round robin, and then we get into the playoffs. The host Finns at the top of Group B with 5 wins and an overtime loss. Swedes 4-1-1. Czechia 4-0-1-1, and the USA 2-2-2 right now, looking to move on. And I know, listen, I've paid attention to the World Championships throughout the round robin. We'll pay even more attention to it and to see what PLD and Adam Lowry can do representing Canada once we get to that playoff round.
Yeah, and those numbers, that was from coming into today, so I'm just trying to figure out the updated ones as well. But yeah, we'll have an eye on the Worlds as it moves on. And we did note heading into the tournament how Lowry and Dubois were given leadership roles, both wearing the A on their jersey. And I have to wonder with the new coach if there is some letter shuffling, just going by the way things ended last year. I'm kind of curious about that. I mean, I have no idea either way, but I think it's something worth speculating on when you just going by the comments.
Oh, no.
Notably, Kyle Connor saying, never too early to start building culture.
Yeah, 4 games left in the season.
And especially how some guys did step up in front of the microphone. As you mentioned, Ehlers, and I think Dubois and Lowry too took bigger roles. So we're having fun following the World. If you want to see some Jets playing, there are some other Jets, Leon Gavanke going in and playing for Germany. Let me ask you this, and
we'll put this out to the chat. Let's just say that the new coach comes in with a blank slate and will name or have the players vote on, who the captain should be. Who do you think the captain of the Winnipeg Jets would be next year?
If you were changing? Yeah.
I'll tell you what. I think it's Adam Lowry.
Oh, I was going to say Morrissey.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, Morrissey would certainly be in the mix, and I think, he's the one guy of that leadership group that I think, obviously has a long-term, contract with the club, and I think will be in that mix going forward. But, I think more and more you see the sort of the divide of the club. Adam Lowry, in a lot of ways, I think was the sort of the other captain in the room that didn't necessarily need one on his jersey, and was a big sort of bridge between, the sides, if you believe what we've heard reported from a number of people. And he's a guy that, is not going to be a guy that, is going to demand first line minutes or second line minutes. I mean, he's such a consummate teammate that if you are trying to build that culture going forward, at least with me, he'd be at the top of my list. There's a bunch of other players I think that would be in the mix for that. But count me a vote for Adam Lowry if they were going to do a blank slate and think about another guy to wear the C next year.
I'm reading from Chad. My vote was for Morrissey, the top defenseman, very knowledgeable guy, but former Scholastic Player of the Year. I thought he's played a great role in media as well. But nominated for his off-ice work too. So I mean, I don't think there's a wrong answer here. I do like who Dan Milburn in chat says Stasny, hands down. But I think it's whether or not he comes back. And would you want to give a guy? I think you could give him a letter, but you want to give him a captain if he's going to be here for 1 year.
Does Paul Stastny even need one?
Yeah,
to be honest. I think even last year he was the conscience of the team. We've talked about that for a long time here, and I mean, I think Paul Stastny, you know what you're getting from Paul Stastny, the way he's going to conduct himself, the way he'll buy in, all of those things, and whether you need that. I know some people asking about PLD. Well, I'll say this. I mean, first of all, you got to get a contract signed. I think if he does sign a long-term deal with the Winnipeg Jets, I think he's absolutely in that mix for, for a letter or a leadership position going forward. And of course, obviously the huge question as well is what happens with Mark Scheifele. And, I think we'll have some clarity for that, not in the very near future, but probably in and around the draft. So it'll be another interesting offseason topic for us to consider, but I think we can really dive into that once we find out who the new bench boss is for the Winnipeg Jets, whenever that is announced.
It's fun to speculate for sure, just based on how the way things went. Mitch writes in chat, next year's captain will be, and then ... Blake Wheeler. And I think, he would definitely be the favorite to return.
Oh, yeah.
But if it depends on how much of a total reset they want to do here and quote, build culture, to use that phrase. Kyle
I
Connor
think that they
said.
are looking at, they're looking at some significant changes, and assuming that Blake is back, having a clean slate. This has happened with a number of teams before. A guy that's been a great captain for many years, moving into, a more senior role, maybe not necessarily as the guy that does the media. And to be honest, if you think about this season, just when it comes to the responsibilities of the captain, if you told Blake that he wasn't going to have to be the spokesperson for the entire team, I think he might be fine with that. But as I said, these are big discussions that will come around whoever the new head coach is on the Winnipeg Jets. And of course, who's left after assumingly some significant tweaks to the roster, or maybe some big changes to the roster. And that's going to be a fun topic for us to kick around on this program for the next couple months, Reem.
Yeah, we can be touching on that for a while. So Barry Trotz, we had a lot of people in chat today. We've hit some major milestones in subs, as you said, approaching 7,000. We did hit, I was hoping to hit this soon, but yes, we did hit the 6969. Very nice.
Surprised you didn't just stop subs at that point. Sorry, no one else can sub, but we're going to leave it there.
Yeah, so there it is. We just passed that, though. I think we're at 6977. So approaching that. Had to toss that out there. I do have the updated double IHFs, after today's games. PLD, he's third in scoring. He's got 10 points in 7 games. Behind Dennis Mulligan and Roman Cervenka. This is who's at the tournament. And Adam Lowry, 11th in scoring. He's tied with Timo Meier. He's got 8 points in 7 games. So a number of players actually have 8 and 7. So, performing very well. That's what you want from those guys. Dave Naylor has, as we're winding down, he's been tweeting. He's got some more details from
give us
Randy
an update. Give us the update from Nails.
This is, I'll just read this here. Just spoke to Randy Ambrosi, got details on the new offer. The league provides $1 million ratification bonus, but removes $450,000 from the 2022 cap and $675,000, I'm assuming $1,000 in guarantees in 28. The 28 cap may not be effective if revenue sharing kicks in. They proposes moving back the ratio model of 6 true Canadians and back to 6 true Canadians and 1 naturalized American, which was in their May 14th proposal. And then he says the deadline is midnight Eastern Thursday unless they go on strike. And then if they reject that proposal, the CFLPA, the training camps will be shut down and the league will no longer house and feed the players as they have been doing during the work stoppage. So some big deadlines coming up midnight Eastern Thursday.
Get it done, folks. We want to be out at IG Field watching some preseason CFL football, see the Bombers take on the Riders next Tuesday, and then move on and get ready for kickoff in June for the 3-down season and the Bombers attempt at a 3-peat. All right, let's get to the Coolbet lines for tonight's game before we finish it up. 2 games. First game is just after 6 p.m. It's the New York Rangers and the Carolina Hurricanes. This is basically a pick 'em. Rangers minus 108, Canes minus 104 on the money line. And as I mentioned earlier, Remo, it's been very strange. Canes 0 on the road, perfect at home. Does that change? I'm kind of with Dave Poulin. I think that changes tonight, although I'd love to be wrong and see the Rangers 2 wins away from improving that Jets pick in the second round to a first rounder.
I'm conflicted. I have Carolina in my bracket, so I would like to see them win. I think they can give Tampa a run. But yes, that Jets draft pick that we're salivating over. So I would bet Carolina. I think they're a better team, but if Shesterkin shows up, then you know,
And
Rangers
he's
are
been
usually
great
pretty
so
good.
far in this series. Very, very different guy than the guy we saw getting yanked a couple times in the series against Pittsburgh. And then it's the Battle of Alberta. Flames -105, Oilers -108. That number's kind of been all over the place. When I did the lock shop, Calgary was +101. Seems like some money's coming in. Again, very close to a pick 'em. I am going to stick with the Flames, though, tonight, as disappointing as these last couple games were. I think they get back into the series. I think they regain a home ice advantage with their best performance of this series so far, Reem. Hey, listen, they're going to need to be better in a lot of areas if they're going to do that and find out some way, not to neutralize, but at least to minimize the damage of Connor McDavid, because he really has been taking it to Calgary. Although, despite what they might say, it hasn't just been a one-man show.
Yeah, it was nice catching up with Tom on that. It's funny, I was like ready to turn off the series when the Flames were up 4-1 in Game 1, and how the tables have turned since then. We even saw the natural hat trick from the natural Evander Kane. I'm still on Calgary. There's a reason why these series are 7 games. You're going to have these ebbs and flows. So I know Connor McDavid is otherworldly right now, but I still I'm having a hard time backing down from Calgary, although this seems to be...
Well, Markstrom's got a mix and a save.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, he just has not been very good in this series so far. And going back, I mean, since he's joined the Calgary Flames, he has been lit up in the Battle of Alberta, both in the regular season and the playoffs so far. So first things first, get a strong performance from your goaltender, and then as a team, figure out how to stop 97 from killing you over and over again. Hey, just quick update on the Stanley Cup odds right now. The Avalanche +145, the Tampa Bay Lightning +260, Carolina Hurricanes +525, Oilers +750, Flames +850, the Rangers 25-1, and the Blues facing elimination are 90-1. Be interesting. Blues, by the way, tomorrow are a 2-1 underdog in Colorado. Be interesting to see what they have. They got completely unhinged. They were so off of their game. Nazem Kadri and the Avalanche took full advantage of it, and now they're facing elimination with a game in Colorado tomorrow night.
I'm surprised the Lightning are still +260 based on, the fact that they've won their series in Colorado. Yeah. Although they, looking at the odds, Colorado -238 tomorrow, they're basically assuming Colorado will win anyways. As far as Tampa goes, I think last year I was like, no Tampa. I'm sick of these guys. I don't want them to win anymore. And this year on Tampa, I'm like, oh man, these guys are so good. How can you cheer against them? Vasilevsky, I mean, he gets shutouts like almost every time in elimination games. They got the best D in Hedman, Stamkos, and Kucherov. That's top 5 forwards. I've said this all last week, but how can you cheer against these guys? I mean, to see 3 in a row, you don't see that often. So I think I'm on the Tampa train, even though I picked Carolina.
Well, I'm big on Tampa right now. I mean, we hit our picks before the playoffs started, and I got on them out of the East and hit them at +130 against the Lightning or against the Panthers. And then as we got closer to puck drop, and it went up to +140, did it again. So thank you, Lightning, for making up for my crappy PGA picks at Coolbet on the weekend. And we're still in the game heading into tonight. Again, I'm going Calgary and Carolina this evening. And let's see, if we put those two together for a little parlay, +283, just about 3-1 if you want to get those two. Again, if you haven't bet at Coolbet before, use the promo code WST on your first deposit. Give you a 100% bonus up to $200. Anything else you want to get to before we roll?
I'll just throw out, I mean, the stuff about Kadri, pretty gross. His wife's sharing the screenshots of the messages. And I think we just have to point out, like, if anyone is messaging, DMing a player or a player's family, take a look in the mirror. Come on, what are we doing here? And
get help.
Going on and
counseling,
making racist remarks, so gross to read. And I know, like, she posted screenshots of the messages, and people did that using their real names. And Mike Stevens of the Hockey News tweeted out, screenshots of her stories, and he says, a family member of one of these accounts reached out to me just now, desperately asking me to take the tweet down because his brother sent a message to Kadri while he was drunk. now their family is getting attacked and they feel unsafe. I mean, I'm not condoning
You make your
attacking.
bed, you're going to sleep in it. I mean, I have no patience for these idiots. They give so many fans a bad name. And the bottom line is, in any aspect of our society, it's disgraceful behavior. But back to it, for the people that are listening, if you ever feel compelled to fire up the gram and fire off a DM to someone that is a player or, God forbid, a family member, take a step back, log off, and get your head together, because people that do that, as you said beforehand, they're just simply not okay.
Yeah, I agree with you. And speaking of that, and I can transition to something else. Bob Irving, legendary voice of the Bombers, his first year not calling in, so many years, has been tweeting out about training camp. And someone just tweeted at Bob Irving and was like, "Bob, we don't care anymore." I was like, how could someone just tweet that at him?
That was the worst. That was like outside of all the racist stuff, because that's at a whole nother level. That's the worst take in Winnipeg Twitter in a long, long time. I don't even know what to say anymore. Bob's the best. And I love the fact that Bob's still engaged with the Canadian Football League and giving his thoughts. And guess what? Like with anything, don't follow someone if you don't want to find their tweets. Figure it out, people. Like, it's not that hard.
I'm trying to find, my dad sent that to me. And he's like, it's amazing. And I've had stuff in my inbox too, being like, "Oh, you have a terrible nasally voice." Some guy just like randomly, I'm like, who are these people just randomly DMing like mean stuff like that? Come on, be better.
Psychos, everyone. Take a chill pill. Back away from your phone.
I was barely on the radio, and some guys, I got like 20 minutes a day, and some guy took the time to find out my Twitter account, DM me that I had a horrible nasally voice.
It's probably one of your buddies. Everyone loves you, Reem.
I wish.
Eric Charleston. Eric's got a great tweet to finish this up. Social media gives trolls some strength to be a keyword warrior, but will fold quicker than my laundry if they say it in person. Pretty much bang on. So anyways, had to address that. It is hilarious how Kadri has sort of become the sympathetic figure through all of this. And frankly, he and his family should be thought of sympathetically right now. But he sure stuck it up St. Louis's ass last night with that hat trick and triggering them even more. And I'll say this, as much as it was disgraceful about the way the fans were behaving, and that's what we've talked about, St. Louis was embarrassing last night. I mean, for a team that's won the cup, to get so unhinged and just be hell-bent on getting revenge on Kadri to their own detriment was amateur hour. And listen, you want to take a run at a guy next year in the regular season, or in a game that's blown out. I mean, listen, you'll have to deal with it that way. But I mean, the two penalties on the same play, just handing over a 5-on-3 power play to the freaking Colorado Avalanche. I mean, it just doesn't get much stupider than that. And then the cheap shot that David Perron tried to deliver as Kadri was celebrating a goal was Bush League as well. But just by seeing that, you know exactly where St. Louis is. They are bent. They're completely off kilter. And I think they're pretty much done.
Yeah, Perron got fined $5,000 for cross-checking Kadri. But yeah, trying to elbow a guy in the head after he scores, so cheap, so dirty, so unnecessary. I think other fans of other leagues laugh. I see laughing at this $5,000 fine for trying to injure a guy. I mean, in the NFL, you get fined tens of thousands for having the wrong color shoelaces. So these $5,000 fines are becoming, when it involves a player's health, I think are becoming like just such a increasing joke, especially in the playoffs. And I'll just wait. I haven't really weighed in on the Kadri thing. Like, I thought what he had done in previous playoffs was pretty stupid, but I think that was just a guy going hard for a loose puck. And when you go hard to the net, stuff happens. I don't think he was trying to injure. He was trying to get to the puck. And it was just unfortunate. I mean, sucks for the Blues, but
he was fully in on a collision with the goaltender.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sort of like where Dave's at. And listen, Nazem Kadri is so far from an angel, especially at the playoffs. I mean, I think you do have to sort of consider, what he's done in the past and that extensive rap sheet. But this was not to the level of anything that he had done before. And I think in a lot of ways it was an unfortunate end to it. But for the Blues to handle it the way they have, frankly, has been embarrassing. And it's a big reason why they're probably going to be done in 5 games.
Yeah, and I got to mention that Barbashev hit on Sam Girard that broke his sternum.
Oh, my God.
Like, absolutely devastating hit. Oh, and that's a big loss for them. But they are a good thing for Colorado. They are so deep on defense. If we get this Colorado Tampa final, watch out. That'll be fun.
Yeah, and of course, Nicole J. How about Binnington throwing the water bottle at Kadri, Brazar? I mean, exactly. And hey, if I was St. Louis, I would be pissed off too. Don't get me wrong. It's just a matter of how you handle it. And I would have thought a team that's had the success that they've had, the experience that their head coach has had, would handle themselves a little differently and in a way that gave them more of a chance to be in that game in this series as opposed to facing elimination when they get home. We'll talk more about this series tomorrow when we get ready for Game 5. Of course, tomorrow we'll also react to everything that's happening tonight in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Trotz Wash will continue. Hopefully we'll have some more information on that at some point from some trustworthy sources on the program. Thanks again to Jeff for telling us everything that he knows today, and make sure to check out his piece in the Winnipeg Free Press. Well, it has been a great show today. Great to be back. A busy week coming up the rest of the way. We'll get into the mind of Murat Atesh tomorrow with more on Trotz Watch, more on the Stanley Cup playoffs, and hopefully some good news on a resolution with the Canadian Football League and the CFL PA. Thanks again to Dave Poulin, Jeff Hamilton, Tom Gazzola for joining us, and everyone in a very busy chat, except for you, Tinder XYZ.
Okay, what's going on today? We're getting hit major
back.
trolls.
You know what? Listen, when we have big YouTube days, the cam girls roll in and try and get people. Don't click those links, everybody.
They probably found out we hit 6969 follows subs today on YouTube. That's probably what it was.
I love face with the strong power moves on Remo. No kidding. All right, gang. Anyways, have a great night tonight. Enjoy the games. We got to get these pods up. Thanks again to all the sponsors that make this show happen. And most of all, to all of you for making Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily a part of your routine. Make sure you hit that red subscribe button on YouTube. Follow the podcast wherever you get it. And make sure to join us tomorrow, 1 o'clock, when we fire up again in less than 22 hours here on WST.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.